casting the spell. That got everyone's attention as they hadn't known that Naruto was there. I didn't think he would have the ability to do something like this. It seems like there's more to Naruto than we thought. Makarov's voice wasn't enough to tear people away from the scene in front of them. The tower slowly broke apart and was absorbed by the black orb. It was quite amazing to actually look at, but for the one experiencing it, it was only pain. Naruto could not scream. He could not see. He could not move. He could not think. The pain was debilitating. It felt like every single nerve cell was on fire. He wanted the pain to end. He wanted to hide. He wanted to run away. Nothing was worth this amount of pain. Suddenly, he could think. He didn't know what snapped him out of it, but he was glad for it. As he began to grit his teeth, he clenched his fists together. He couldn't control the spell, but he could feel that it was nearing completion. All he had to do was endure the pain for a little bit more. Grinning at feeling the spell reach completion, he allowed himself to relax. A second later, Naruto began to scream. Once again, he was assaulted with pain. His body was trying to assimilate the magic, but it was failing. It quickly began to leak out of him in an increasingly expanding orb. He could feel his body begin to slowly fall apart within the torrent of magic. He tried to hold it together, but it was useless. In a matter of moments his body would disintegrate. He could feel himself losing consciousness. I make this big speech about not dying for your friends and here I go against it. This really is. Losing consciousness soon after, he did not see something strange occur. His Rinnegan began to glow a deep purple. It quickly began to reconstruct his body, bringing him back from the death. It then began to integrate the magic around it into the newly created body. Once finished, it stopped glowing. Hanging in the air for a moment, Naruto began to fall. The moment his head went under the water, his eyes snapped open and Naruto flew out of the ocean. Trying to calm his racing heartbeat, Naruto began to patting down his body. I'm alive. How? Gabriel, did you do something? Naruto expected to feel Gabriel's presence in his mind, but he felt nothing. Looking around himself, Naruto assumed that controlling that much magic was tiring when not at full strength, so Gabriel probably went back to sleep. Finally feeling calm, Naruto noticed that his clothes were in pretty good condition strangely enough. Which was strange because he remembered having his body torn apart by the torrent of magical energy. Shrugging it off, Naruto began to glide back towards the shore, unaware of the fact that everyone on shore could feel his presence from miles away. Master, what's going on with Naruto? Mirajane's voice shook a bit when she spoke. After all, just an hour ago she knew that Naruto's presence was nothing like this. This presence was large, intimidating, suffocating. At first she believed she was hallucinating, but as it got stronger she knew for a fact that this power belonged to Naruto. The only thing that she didn't understand was, if he had so much power why didn't he use it against Phantom Lord? Everyone around Mirajane felt the same, except for Makarov. They couldn't understand what was happening either. This presence was nothing like they knew Naruto to be like. It felt like they were in the presence of a higher existence than them. They felt insignificant and it only got worse as Naruto got closer. Makarov, himself, was thinking deeply. He knew of many different ways that this sort of feeling could be invoked, but he didn't know if Naruto knew any of them. He also knew that in order to make sure that things didn't get worse he would have to act quickly. Seeing Naruto about to land, Makarov moved quickly and sent a burst of extremely powerful sleep magic into Naruto's face. Makarov knew that something changed when Naruto was actually fighting off the magic until he sent another blast of it. Catching Naruto before he fell, he turned and walked away from the group who were doing their best to understand what had happened. Naruto and I will return after I have had a word with him. All of you return to your rooms and treat your injuries. Also, have some fun at the casino. It was fixed quickly after Urza was captured, so make sure to win some money. The last part was said with a laugh. He didn't need them to think that he was going to punish Naruto. He just needed to know what happened. That was some good sleep. Why am I outside? Naruto was a slow riser, so it took him a few moments to remember that Makarov had knocked him out. Quickly jumping to his feet, he looked around looking for Makarov and found him sitting on a boulder a few feet away from him. What the hell, Gramps? You didn't need to knock me out. I was all happy to see all of you and I was gonna give you all a great big hug and what do? You hit me with sleep magic. Twice. With a finger pointing straight at Makarov's face, Naruto couldn't tell that Makarov was trying to be serious. Naruto. What did you do to the giant lacrima? Any other time, Naruto's face would have sent Makarov laughing, but at the moment he had to be serious. Oh, Well, I got rid of it. Makarov knew that there was more to it, because you couldn't just get rid of something like that. Tell me what you did. Seeing that Makarov was being serious, Naruto decided to actually tell him almost everything. Well, I cast a spell that would let me absorb the giant lacrima into my body. Seeing that Makarov was just staring at him, he began to fidget. Do you know what sort of effect that much magic would have on you? Seeing that Naruto was not understanding, Makarov pointed off to the side. Following his finger, Naruto saw that there were actually 3 stone pillars surrounding them. Looking up, Naruto saw that there was a glowing magic circle above them. Looking back to Makarov, Naruto noticed that he was actually sweating a bit. This spell is a maximum defense seal that is being supported by the 3 pillar gods. It's taking the full strength of this combination spell in order to completely suppress your presence. Whatever you did, it has caused your very presence to pulse with power. Your existence itself is something that has never been seen before. You are more a being of magic now than a human. I do not know what sort of consequences this will have, so it must be kept a secret. However, your own presence is having an adverse effect on your surroundings. Looking around himself, Naruto couldn't tell what Makarov meant. Seeing that Naruto wasn't seeing what he meant, Makarov decided to give him a hint. Sense the magic in the air around us. Finally understanding, Naruto instead activated his battle archive. Focusing on the magic in the air, he could see what Makarov felt. His own magic was releasing a pressure that was affecting his surroundings. Looking at Makarov, he could see that Makarov was using his own magic to combat the pressure. Breathing deeply, he began to try and restrain his magic. He was having some success as he could see that it was no longer trying to smother Makarov's own magic. However, it was difficult keeping it reined in. It kept trying to just spread out. It's hard to keep it restrained. I'm gonna have to learn to keep this up all the time, right? No longer feeling smothered, Makarov regarded Naruto with a critical eye. You are going to have to get used to restraining your magic. All powerful wizards have to. Well, just keep practicing and try to keep slip-ups to a minimum. Now let's go. I want to get drunk. I can't believe we got all of Fairy Tail banned from the Akane resort. Walking sulkily back toward Magnolia Town, Lucy complained the entire time on the road. After Naruto and Makarov had returned at night, everyone had gathered at the beach in order to begin the Fairy Tail farewell ceremony. While Naruto didn't know Urza's friends, he was saddened that they had chosen to leave, but he could understand their reasons. He himself had the same reasons when he had been forced to leave his village. After that, everyone went to have fun again. Except that Makarov got drunk, Urza got mad, she lost money, Natsu destroyed a bunch of machines, Gray stripped, and Lucy tried to keep everyone calm, which only made things worse. In the end, the resort had ended up banning anyone from the Fairy Tail Guild, and sent them the bill for the damages. Don't worry about it, Lucy. It's only for 5 years. We've been banned for far longer. As always, Mirajan tried to perk her up. It wasn't working. Bah, who cares if we've been banned? I'm just happy they didn't press charges. We have enough trouble keeping the Magic Council from trying to arrest us. I could only imagine what would happen if we got in trouble with the normal law enforcement. Makarov's logic was at least able to stop making Lucy sulk. I wonder if they've finished the guild yet. There wasn't much left to finish. Naruto's question was answered when they saw the guild. Walking up to it, they were able to see that it now looked like a castle. Gawking at it, they walked through and noticed that it now contained an open-air cafe and a gift shop. As Natsu and them stayed to talk to Max, who mained the store, Naruto, Mirajan, and Makarov went inside to see how everything was. As they walked through, they hadn't expected for everyone to start swarming them, yelling in celebration. However, Naruto soon realized that they weren't happy that he or Makarov were there, they were happy that Mirajan was back. They were swarming all over her, crying and screaming about how happy they were that she was back. Mirajan was trying to get everyone to calm down, but apparently they wouldn't listen. Sighing, Naruto made it rain on them. Once everyone was glaring at him, Naruto made his way to Mirajan and ate off all of the excess water on her. Once Mirajan was all dry, she asked Ritas what was going on. As he tried to dry himself off, he answered, Kana is horrible at working the bar. She serves the drinks and then she drinks them. She even takes our money afterward. Seeing that everyone was agreeing with Ritas, Mirajan looked at Kana. Kana was doing her best to look anywhere but at the group that was staring at her for taking their drinks. Mirajan instead just shook her head and went straight back to work as everyone cheered. The cheer didn't last long though, as the lights dimmed and a curtain was pulled to show Gajil in a suit with a guitar preparing to sing. The instant the curtain was pulled, the guild was divided into two. One half stood in front of the stage and the other half was at the farthest wall from the stage. As Gajil began to sing, the one near the stage screaming their support for the song, while the other half just began to throw anything they could get their hands on, and one of fairy tale's famous brawls began. It was unfortunate that the brawl began because the moment it did, Makarov came out of his office with Juvia next to him. He was going to formally introduce her to the guild, but that took a backseat the moment he saw a brawl start in his shiny new guild. As he began to cry at the damages, Juvia just stood next to him until she saw Gray. The moment she did, she skipped over to him. Naruto tried his best to stay out of the brawl at the moment, as he really wasn't sure if he could keep his power contained in a fight yet. Still, it was nice to be back after what happened at the resort. Sitting at the bar, he shared a smile with Mirajan as he saw Gajil and Natsu exchange kicks in the air. Okay, so you're telling me that ever since the guild was finished, Gajil has been doing concerts here. And half the guild likes the songs, while the other half violently hates it. Seeing Mikao nod his head, Naruto began to laugh. Who would have thought that Gajil would win over the guild with his crappy singing? So have Levi, Jet, and Droy have gotten over what happened. That was something he was worried about. He didn't want his friends to be antagonistic to each other. Well, Levi just wants to get over it, but Jet and Droy are still angry as all hell. I just think they're mad because they got beaten up in front of Levi. It's a pride thing. They'll probably try and jump Gajil later on, and from what I've seen of him, he feels guilty that he attacked them, so he'll probably let them beat him around for a bit. Sighing because he knew that Mikao was right, Naruto laid his head down the table and looked around the guild. Except that he saw Gajil following Jet and Droy. Getting up, he waved goodbye to Mikao, Wakaba, and Kana. Following behind the group, he made sure to not be seen. As they arrive at their destination, Naruto realized where they were at. It was the scene of where Gajil riveted Team Shadow Gear to the tree. Looking back at the group, he saw that Levi was hiding behind the tree. He couldn't hear what was being said, but from the way that Jet and Droy were standing, they were going to attack Gajil. As much as Naruto wanted to help Gajil, he knew that he wanted them to attack him so that he could stop feeling so guilty. So he let it happen. It was interesting to see how strong Jet and Droy really were. The only problems he could see was that Droy's magic required those seeds to activate, so what would happen if he ran out? Shaking his head to clear it of those thoughts, he noticed that there was another guy there. A blonde-haired guy that had headphones on. Looking closer, he activated his battle archive to get a better look. However, the moment he saw sparks come out of those headphone spike things, he moved. Standing in front of Gajil, he raised his hand and drew the lightning towards himself and absorbed it. Phew, now that is some seriously strong lightning magic. It's almost like you actually wanted to seriously hurt someone. The look on the guy's face only made Naruto's smirk grow larger. Who the hell are you, brat? The pulsing veins in the guy's forehead told Naruto that the guy had serious anger issues. Naruto Uzumaki, now who the hell are you, ya bastard? The increased pulsing only served to make Naruto smirk even more. Naruto, be careful, he's Laxus, he's the master's grandson. He's incredibly powerful. Jet's warning only served to make Laxus angrier. You worms, be quiet. Laxus sent a bolt of lightning at Shadow Gear, but Levi was in its direct path. Moving quickly, Gajil blocked the attack before Naruto could absorb it. Are you done yet? I have work to do. Walking away, Gajil held his arm close to his body, trying to get his arm to stop twitching. Gajil, wait. Levi's plea went unanswered as Gajil walked away. So, you're telling me that I can build my own house? As long as I build outside of Magnolia's boundaries. The look Naruto was giving Makarov had the man uncomfortable. Yes, that's what Natsu did after he found out he couldn't afford to rent his own place. The giant grin that Naruto now sported made Makarov wonder if he had made a terrible mistake in telling Naruto this. Thanks a lot, old man. I've got some building to do. Running out of the guild and pushing people over as he did, Naruto didn't notice that he had started another one of Fairy Tail's brawls. So according to this map, I just passed the borders of Magnolia Town. Looking over the paper and into the dense foliage, Naruto was amazed how far into the woods Magnolia extended. I'm gonna need a nice flat piece of land to build my own house. Maybe a clearing. Or maybe I can just chop some of these trees down. Looking around, Naruto was quite sure that he wouldn't be able to find a clearing large enough to build something on. Sighing, Naruto looked around trying to find somewhere to build his house. Unfortunately for him, he didn't find anything of the sort even after looking for hours. Walking into a clearing, he found himself on a small path. Following it, he found that the path actually led to a tree house. An actual house made from a hollowed-out tree. Looking at it more closely, he realized that he could actually see runes on the tree. Examining the runes, Naruto realized that the runes were actually there to help keep the tree alive and growing. Amazed even more, Naruto realized exactly what he wanted for his home. Though, he was still fuzzy on the whole carving out a tree part. Running up the steps, Naruto knocked on the door like crazy until an elderly woman with pink hair opened up. As he opened his mouth to speak, the door was shut in his face. Frowning, he knocked repeatedly until she opened again. This time, he was able to get out a word before she tried to slam the door again, but he jammed his foot between the door and the frame. I just need you to answer a question. It'll be really quick, please. Trying to get his face through the open space was difficult as the old lady was fairly strong. I hate humans. Just leave. That was a strange response, he thought. Look, I just need to know how you hollowed out your tree. I'll leave right after you tell me. I don't have to tell you anything. Just leave. Rolling his eyes, Naruto managed to push the door open enough to get his head through, so he could look at the lady in the eyes. Look, old lady, I just want to know something real fast. After that, I'll get out of your hair. From her face, Naruto saw that she relented and let him inside. Except the moment he stepped inside, he got his face smacked with a book. There. That book will tell you how to hollow out a tree, now get out. Grabbing the book with his hands, Naruto was unprepared for the broom. It smacked him out and down the stairs. Landing on his face, Naruto got up and dusted himself off before sticking his tongue out at the lady. Grabbing the book, Naruto began to flip through it as he walked aimlessly. So, I need to find a tree big enough for what I want. Well, that's going to be a problem. I only need something small at the moment, but later on, I might need something bigger and I don't want to just keep on hollowing out trees every time I move. I wish I could just make my own tree. Feeling stupid for only now realizing that he could in fact make his own tree, Naruto looked at the very small clearing he found. It was just big enough for a group of maybe 3 or 4 people to sit comfortably. Looking at the surrounding trees, Naruto looked to see if anything was using those placed for a home. Finding none, strangely enough, Naruto decided to just cut all of the surrounding trees down. Everything had been going great until Naruto realized that he still needed to take care of all of the stumps. With some earth magic he got rid of those quickly enough. All of the trees though, he just sent into his dimensional pocket. They would make great firewood. Looking at the much larger clearing, Naruto decided that it would be a perfect time to create a house. Except he froze. Wood burned. He was going to make a house from a tree. More than anything, his friends would all want to come visit once he was done. Natsu would want to visit. Natsu is a pyromaniac. Natsu would burn his house down. Even if he added runes, Natsu would keep trying until he broke through the runes. Dropping to the ground in anguish, Naruto wished he could just make a non-flammable tree. Snapping his eyes open, he realized that he might be able to make a non-flammable tree. Metal was non-flammable. He knew how to create iron from seeing Gajil do it. He knew how to use make magic from seeing both Gray and Lackey use it. He could create metal make. Standing up quickly, Naruto activated archive. Pulling up the tree magics, he focused on ice make and wood make. He was looking through the mechanics to see how different and similar they were. The major difference was that one created ice and the other wooden objects. Digging deeper, he realized that both were similar in mechanics. However, wood make had something that ice make didn't. The wood from wood make was alive. That made Naruto pause. Could he create a living metal tree? The rush of excitement he felt flow through his body was enough to let him know that he had to try. Taking the mechanics of both ice and wood make and putting that on an empty screen, he closed the screens of ice and wood make. Looking at Gajil's Iron Dragon Slayer magic, he focused upon the mechanics of creating metal. That was the part he was looking for. Finding it, he ripped that from the rest of the information and transferred it over to the other screen. The moment he transferred the information, he saw something strange happening to the screen. The information on the screen began to change. New lines of information were beginning to form and other ones were being erased. As it happened, never did it once cross Naruto's mind to stop the process. Somehow Naruto knew that this was supposed to happen. He just didn't realize it. Held in a trance by the screen, Naruto didn't realize he closed the other screen. When it finally stopped, Naruto blinked and looked at the new information that was on display. Reading it through, Naruto realized that his archive had somehow created the new magic he needed from the information he had. However, it was untested and it had no name. Grinning with excitement, Naruto felt the words flow through him as he put his hands together. Metal Make. Tree of Infinity. Feeling the magic drain from his being, Naruto grinned even wider when he saw a small metal sapling rise from the ground. He began to grin like a maniac when he saw that the sapling was growing very quickly, and he grinned until it hurt when he saw that the sapling was quickly turning into a full-grown tree. His grin began to lessen when he realized that the tree was not slowing down. He stopped smiling when he saw that it was actually growing taller than the surrounding forest. He began to wonder if he might have made a mistake trying out an untested spell by pumping so much magic into it. When he saw that it was actually growing large enough that it was going to take up the entire clearing he had just made, he knew that he was going to have to do a lot of explaining. To his relief, the tree stopped growing when it reached its trunk had filled up most of the clearing. Looking at his creation though, Naruto couldn't help but feel proud. He had created a living metal tree. Though, he quickly realized that he now had a new problem. How was he supposed to hollow out a metal tree? His answer came from the tree itself. He saw that there was actually an opening near to where he was at. Walking through it, he was startled when the opening closed itself. Before he could even begin to feel any apprehension from walking inside the strange tree, the inside began to illuminate itself. All along the walls, bark, he reminded himself, he saw vertical orange glowing lines that lit up the room nicely. Looking at the room completely, he saw that there were actually stairs. He would have found that strange if he hadn't just created a living metal tree. Walking up the stairs, he saw the second floor was very much the same as the first. Going up another level, he saw that the third floor was the same and going up again, the fourth was too. Overall, he was very impressed by what he had created. Though, he was happy with the fact that he didn't know exactly what he did. He noticed one thing going through up the stairs. The tree had no windows. The moment he thought that though, the tree gained windows. Walking up to one of the windows, he saw that he had an amazing view of all of Magnolia. Looking down, he saw that he was actually quite high up. He was much higher up than any of the other trees. In fact, he was sure that his tree was probably visible from Magnolia. Laying down and staring at the ceiling, he realized that the floor was actually very warm, even though it was made out of metal. Yawning, he couldn't help but feel completely at ease and relaxed in his new home. Turning to lay on his side, Naruto fell asleep. What do you think made this? No idea, but it wasn't here yesterday. Well, if anything, it's absolutely delicious. That last voice woke Naruto up in an instant. Standing up and running down the stairs, Naruto ran to where the opening was last night and he saw it open for him. Running outside, he saw that Gajeel was about to rip out another piece of his beloved tree. Running and tackling Gajeel, Naruto had Gajeel face down in the ground holding one of his arms and twisting it. Naruto. Turning to where his name was being called, he saw that Mirajan and Kana were staring at him in shock. Waving hello, he was tossed off of Gajeel's back. Gajeel yelled, "What the hell was that for?" Pointing a finger at him, Naruto yelled back, "You were eating my house, you bastard." Your house. Turning, he nodded towards Kana. Yup. Just made it yesterday. Took quite a bit of magic power too. Patting the trunk, Naruto was surprised to feel that the bark actually felt like the bark of a normal tree. Looking up, he saw that the branches had actual leaves as well. He wondered if the tree lived off of photosynthesis as well. How in the world did you even make something like this? Hearing Mirajan's awe, Naruto could only grin. I made it with my metal make. Seeing the confused looks, Naruto decided to demonstrate. Putting his hands together, fist over palm, he released some magic and he felt the object take form. Opening his hand, he showed them the fairy tale symbol he had just crafted. That's amazing. Where did you learn that? Hearing the praise made Naruto blush lightly. I actually created the magic yesterday. I made it from combining the basics of ice make and wood make, with Iron Dragon Slayer's ability to create metals. With that I was able to create this beautiful thing. I actually have no idea what it can do, but I'm excited. Naruto wasn't able to see the shocked looks he received because he was currently staring at the tree with pride. None of the three of them could even begin to try and create a new style of magic, and Naruto went and created one in a day. That was simply beyond words. So what are you doing here? That snapped all of them out of their little episode. The old man told us to come and see what the hell this thing was doing here, but considering you're the one who made it, it'd be best if you went and told him yourself. Nodding at Gajil's words, Naruto began to walk and was followed by Mirajan and Kana. Gajil stayed back and stared at the tree in amazement. He had created complex things with his magic before, but this thing before him was amazing. When he had eaten that small fragment from the tree, he was amazed at the extreme purity of the metal and concentrated amount of pure magic it contained. He doubted that he would be able to find a better tasting metal in all of Fury. Looking at the tree again, he finally noticed that it actually had leaves. That made him wonder if the tree dropped its leaves like regular trees did in autumn. Would the leaves rust off? That was something worth thinking about. Gajil, you better not be eating any more of my tree or you're getting the worst ass kicking of your life. Hearing Naruto yell, Gajil decided to follow. He was tempted to take a piece of the tree just to spite Naruto, but decided not to. Naruto might let him have some later. I can't believe I completely forgot that the Harvest Festival was today. You'd think that I would remember something like the Miss Fairy Tale contest. Naruto stated as he sat next to Gajil in the packed guild hall. Maybe you're secretly gay? Gajil asked with complete seriousness. Hey, first of all, I am not gay. Second of all, I was a bit preoccupied by the fact that I created a brand new type of magic. Naruto yelled at Gajil. This got them more than a few looks from the surrounding crowd. Hey, I don't care. You can tell yourself whatever you need to fall asleep at night. I came to stare at scantily clad women. Not to talk about a teenager's UAL preferences. With that, Gajil refocused upon the stage as Max began the contest. Contestant number 1 is an exotic beauty with an otherworldly stomach. Kana Alberona. Max yelled into the microphone as Kana appeared on stage to the yells and whistles of the crowd. Now, she'll use her magic to appeal to the audience. Seeing the cards swirling around Kana, Naruto focused upon that to see if he could figure out what type of spell or magic was doing that when he saw something. For a brief instant he saw Kana naked. Looking around, he saw that he was the only one that saw her like that. Leaning back into his seat, he thought, I just imagined it. I can't be the only person to have ever imagined how Kana must look like naked. With that he looked at the stage again to see that it was Juvia now on stage. Like Kana, she used her magic to appeal to the crowd. Like Kana again, Naruto saw her naked for an instant. Blinking his eyes, he saw that she was now wearing a bathing suit. Slapping his cheeks lightly, he wondered if his tree had somehow poisoned him. Focusing back onto the stage again, he saw that it was Mirajan. As he was about to root for her, he saw her transform her face into Happy's. That moment of confusion quickly turned into laughter the moment she changed into Gajil. Turning to look at Gajil, his laughter soon turned hysterical as he struggled to stay upright in his seat. Failing, Naruto fell to the ground and tried to stop laughing, but couldn't. As he finally got himself to calm down, he saw that Urza was now on the stage. Seeing her begin to glow, he was once again surprised to catch an instant of Urza naked. Blinking, he saw that she was now in a gothic Lolita outfit. Now, Naruto knew that something was up. He was the only one who was seeing his friends naked for an instant. Looking around, he caught an image of his reflection and realized exactly why this was happening. My Rinnegan. It's allowing me to see through magic easier, but only for slight moments. Is my Rinnegan improving? Bah, I'll figure it out later. I've got scantily clad women to look at. Looking at the stage once more, he was surprised to see it was Lucy. How long did I space out for? My celestial spirits and I will perform a cheer. Entry number 8. Looking around, he saw that the voice was coming from a woman who wore glasses in a green dress. Apparently her name was Evergreen if her introduction was true. Lucy. Don't look into her eyes. Unfortunately, Gray's warning came a moment too late as Lucy turned into stone. Everyone, run for your lives. Max's warning was enough to make all of those who weren't mages leave the guild. What the hell is going on? Gajiel's question was soon answered as the Thunder Legion made their appearance. Hey, look, it's the guy who kicked your ass. The headlock Naruto was put into was completely worth the insult. However, they both knew that something serious was going on the moment that Laxus tried to strike Lucis' statue with lightning. It's time to decide who the strongest of Fairy Tail is with a contest. If you want to turn the girls back to normal, you have to defeat us first. You have 3 hours to do so, any longer and the girls will turn to sand. Evergreen finished with a small grin. All of Magnolia will serve as the battlefield. When you find us, or when we find you, the battle will begin. Laxus finished with a large grin. Just looking at him, Naruto could tell that something wasn't adding up. Laxus, stop this foolishness. The sudden increase in Makarov's size only reinforced the fact that this was not something that Makarov would take lightly. I told you before, it's entertainment for the festival, so just simmer down. Let's enjoy this while it lasts. Laxus finished with a large flash as he took his guard with him. Opening his eyes, Naruto was able to see that the Thunder Legion was gone. Though he finally noticed that Natsu was actually on the ground for some reason. We have to save the girls. We have to save my sister and the others. Catch Laxus. With a final battle cry, most of the mages left the guild. Makarov, however, was staring at all of his frozen children. With a cry, Makarov ran out to try and capture Laxus. However, he was soon stopped by an enchantment created by Fried. Looking at the words that appeared above the doorway, Naruto realized that Makarov wouldn't be able to leave anytime soon. As he stared at the doorway, Naruto really wanted to go and fight, but he had to do something first. Walking up to Miragen, Naruto put his hands on her head and activated his battle archive. He tried to absorb the spell that was placed on her. Unfortunately, he realized that he couldn't. What he was looking at was only half the spell. This half kept them as statues. The other half was with Evergreen. If he wanted to free the girls, he was gonna have to defeat Evergreen. Jumping off the stage, he ran towards the doorway. Except he collided midair with an invisible wall. What the hell? I'm not 80 or a stone statue. Hearing a yell, he saw that Natsu was running towards him. Moving out of the way, and sticking his foot out, he tripped Natsu and expected Natsu's face to meet the ground, but was surprised when he was actually stopped by the enchantment as well. Natsu, Naruto, or either of you 80? Are you stone statues? Looking at Makarov like he was an idiot, Naruto tried to figure out exactly what was happening. For some reason, the enchantments were confusion Naruto and Natsu as being either 80 or a stone statue. Obviously they weren't stone statues, so that left them with the enchantment confusing them for being 80. Hey, Gramps. These enchantments were made with runes, right? I'll just modify them. Extending his middle and 4 fingers of his right hand, Naruto lit them up with magic. Finding the right sequence he needed, he shot the runes toward the enchantment. Naruto expected the enchantment to just fall apart. He didn't expect his runes to shatter. Though, he realized why when he looked at the enchantment closer. Shit, my runes are incompatible with the enchantment. My runes use a different language than Fried's enchantments. Staring and concentrating on the wall, Naruto began to focus on a tiny spot. He wasn't sure if he had seen it, but for a brief moment, he had seen an extremely small hole in the wall. That meant that the enchantment wasn't absolute. Fried had messed up. Grinning, he focused and saw the tiny hole spring up once again. To the side of him, Natsu and Makarov were arguing about whether or not this was a tournament. He ignored them as best as he could. Seeing the hole open up, Naruto jumped at it. He was able to make the hole slightly bigger by jamming his finger into it. Too focused on what he was doing, he didn't see that both Makarov and Natsu were staring at him. Jamming a second finger in, he was able to force the hole bigger until he could fit his hand through. Using his other hand to make the hole even bigger, he was able to make it big enough him to jump through. See ya, Gramps. Jumping through the hole, he saw that it snapped back closed almost immediately after his foot just cleared the wall. Seeing their faces, Naruto couldn't help the laugh that came out. Standing up and running, Naruto tried to figure out where Evergreen could be hiding. He didn't have to think long as he saw Elfman trying to swat her down. Unfortunately, Elfman was covered in some sort of powder which then exploded. Running towards them, he was able to get to them the moment that Elfman was turned to stone. So your eyes hold your petrification magic. Turning around, Evergreen was surprised to see a small child. Go home, child. I'm sure your parents are worried about you. The soft tone of her voice would have made her seem kind, even sweet to Naruto had he not seen what she did to all of his friends. Sorry, I'm an orphan, but what I'm wondering, do I just have to kick your ass to turn everyone back to normal? The sudden rustling of wind around him let Evergreen know that he wasn't just a normal child. Though when she saw his hand she knew immediately why. So you're in Fairy Tail. Wow, I can't believe that Makarov would allow someone so weak into the guild. Her change in demeanor showed Naruto exactly what he needed to know. She could be kind and sweet, but apparently she could change it on a dime. You'll see that I'm not so weak. With that, Naruto threw 3 lances of light magic. Of course, Evergreen just flew up. However, she didn't expect the lances to change course. Just barely dodging the lances, she was unprepared for the sudden burst of wind that threw her higher up into the air. Reorienting herself, she saw that Naruto was flying right in front of her. Pushing down her glasses, she knew he wouldn't be able to look away, and she was right. What? Until the rock just shattered off of Naruto's form. Smirking at Evergreen, Naruto could only smile. Your eyes hold the spell that turns them to stone. By looking into your eyes without protection, you are able to transfigure their physical bodies. It also grants you control over them, like being able to shatter them whenever you want. However, the biggest flaw is that 2 normal eyes must be looking at the same time. If one of them is artificial, then the spell is not completely cast. This makes it possible for the petrified victim to be saved. Smirking at her enraged look, Naruto figured it would be best to defeat her quickly. Shut up. Fairy machine gun. Leprechaun. Sending waves of magic stingers at Naruto, Evergreen expected for him to dodge. Sadly, she was fighting someone who could absorb her magic. Smirking ever wider at her surprised look, Naruto just flew through the magic stingers, absorbing any that touched him. He was afraid his wings wouldn't be able to absorb the stingers since the wings themselves were magic, but apparently they could. As he got closer to Evergreen, he saw that she was going to try and escape, but he wouldn't give her the option. Bansho Tenon. Pulling her towards him, he pumped his left hand full of sleep magic. The same magic that Makarov used on him at Akane Resort. Throwing the magic at her face, she fell asleep instantly and Naruto caught her. As much as he wanted to just beat the crap out of her, she was still Fairy Tail. Looking down, he saw that Elfman was returning to normal, though he was still unconscious. Putting Evergreen next to him, he was about to return to the guild when he saw something that was not in the sky before. Flying back up, he took a more thorough look at it magically. What he saw was not good. Each one of the orbs contained a lightning lacrima that was overloaded with magic. The orbs were used to contain the excess magic and were spelled to have both a timer and body link magic. That made it dangerous for anyone to destroy the orbs. Looking around, he saw that someone in the guild was about to shoot one of the lacrima. Before he could even yell out a warning, she fired. Naruto could only grit his teeth when she began screaming in pain. Looking around trying to sense if he could find one of the remaining Thunder Legion, he was able to dodge an attack from behind. Turning to see who attacked him, he was surprised to see it was a floating wooden doll. However, that surprise turned into caution when he saw that it was joined by 4 more. Looking around, he saw someone wearing some strange clothing that was staring at them. I'm Bixlow, boy, so you're the one who defeated Ever. You don't seem all that tough. Go, my babies. With that, the dolls began to chase Naruto as he flew through the air. As he dodged, he waited until he saw an opening. Seeing it, he flew through with a large burst of speed and clocked the guy with his fist. Ouch, you have one mean right hook. I guess if you're fast enough to dodge my babies, then I don't have a choice. I'm going to have to use it. Pulling his hood off along with the eye covering he used, he opened his eyes. Figure eyes. Glowing green, he stared right into Naruto's eyes. Except, when he got a look at Naruto's soul, he began to scream. The moment Naruto saw the eyes glow, he began to understand the magic within them. Bixlow's figure eyes allowed him to look at people's souls. However, in doing so he can also turn them into dolls which he can then control. Except something went wrong. The moment that Bixlow looked at his soul, Naruto had to grip his head. He was getting images. Memories that were not his own. Looking and trying to make sense of them, he saw some small glimpses. 8 giant creatures staring at a man who had the Rinnegan. 2 men, one with burning red eyes, and another who could control wood. 2 women with incredibly red hair. 1 man with the same hair color as his. A man with white hair who also had a Rinnegan. Suddenly, they stopped. Breathing deeply, Naruto realized that somehow he had wound up on the ground holding his head incredibly tightly. Letting go and looking up, he saw that he was on the rooftop that he and Bixlo had been fighting on, except that Bixlo was gone. Standing up, he slowly looked around to realize that he was completely alone. Hey, can anyone hear me? It's Warren. Look at the sky. Laxus has those things ready to destroy the city. Telepathy. I wonder. Feeling it naturally come to him, he was able to connect himself with whoever was using telepathy. Unfortunately, my telepathy can't reach the guild, so anyone who can hear will have to do. Don't worry, I can expand my telepathy. Naruto informed Warren. Though, it seemed like Warren wasn't expecting it if his reply was anything to go by. How the hell did you hack my telepathy? Warren yelled mentally at Naruto. It really wasn't hard. Anyway, can anyone at the guild hear me? It's Naruto. Naruto expected for Makarov to answer, but was instead surprised by who it was. Wait, are you that brat that was bothering me yesterday? This threw Naruto for a loop. He didn't expect for that old lady to be at the guild. What the hell are you doing at the guild, you old hag? Where's Gramps? At the moment Naruto was trying to ignore all of the yelling the other guild members were doing. Apparently, they were pissed off that they got beat up. Bunch of babies. Makarov isn't doing well. The change in her voice was clear. Whatever happened, Makarov would probably not make it. At the moment Naruto was glad that the other members were yelling or else they would have heard and they wouldn't be able to focus on what needed to be done. Unfortunately for Naruto, he was out of it long enough for Lucy to rally everyone together and have them attack the lacrima in the air. The moment that Naruto snapped back to reality, he saw all of the attacks flying. Thinking quickly, he tried to find a way to keep them from getting killed by the body link magic. His answer came when he turned and saw his tree in the distance. His metal make would be able to conduct electricity. He could take the body link magic and place it on the metal. That way, he could ground all of the electricity that would be released and save his guild mates. Looking at where he would unleash his spell, he realized that the cathedral needed a new tower. Fist over palm, Naruto prepared himself. Once again, words just flowed through him as he unleashed his spell. Metal make. Superconductive lightning rod. A giant pillar rose from the center dome of the cathedral. As it rose into the air, the attacks hit the lacrima. As the pillar finished with a fairy tale symbol at the top, the body link magic activated. Glowing blue, the lightning rod drew all of the released lightning magic into itself. It began to glow gold with magic before it shattered into millions of tiny fragments that quickly disappeared. As he took pride in his quickly made spell, Naruto noticed a lack of cheers in his mind. Hello. Are you guys alright? You were able to keep most of the attack from hitting us, but some of it still hit us. We're not as bad off as we would have been if you hadn't created that tower. Urza's thoughts came through clearly, which was a good thing because he had seen all of the swords that hit the lacrimas. Only one person in the guild had that many. Just take the pain as proof that you just saved Magnolia. Now, to kick Laxus' ass and prepare for Fantasia. Anyone wanna come with? A cacophony of groans was his answer. Shaking his head at their inability to take a hit, Naruto prepared to look for Laxus when a bright light from the cathedral drew his attention. Seeing the giant fairy tale mark pop up over the cathedral, Naruto knew his destination. Activating Era, Naruto flew off. However, as he flew he saw Laxus and Natsu fighting it out. Stopping, he wondered if he needed to interfere in the fight at all. Thunder Dragon's Demolition Fist. The giant fist of lightning quickly changed Naruto's mind. Laxus was out of control. Quickly flying in front of Natsu, Naruto saw the lightning coming, but something was strange. He could see that in a certain spot, the magic was unstable. Quickly charging his fist with magic power, Naruto punched the weak spot. As expected, the magic power in the lightning destabilized and the attack dissipated harmlessly. More and more small fry. I'll obliterate all of you. Seeing that Laxus was preparing a powerful attack, Naruto looked to see that Natsu was still raring to go. Smirking, Naruto channeled fire magic into his hand and compressed it. Throwing the glowing white orb at Natsu, Naruto was happy to see that Natsu looked surprised at the quality of fire he made. Thunder Dragon Heavenward Halberd. Speeding forward, Naruto grabbed the magic in his hands, and, shocking everyone around him, modified the spell so that he could physically use it like a real halberd. Still moving, He slammed the spell into the shocked Laxus' stomach and sent him flying into the air where he met an angry Natsu. Fire Dragon Iron Fist. Talon. Wing Attack. Sword Horn. Flame Elbow. Flame Lotus. Exploding Flame Blade. Sending Laxus' unconscious body back onto the cathedral roof, Natsu landed and began to roar in victory, quickly followed by everyone else. Frowning at the victory, Naruto let the halberd dissipate. He had wanted to fight Laxus all by himself. It wasn't fair that he had to share the victory with Natsu and Gajeel. No, I won't be in the parade. If you want me to blow something up, that's no problem. If you want me to make something, I can do that. I can't, however, perform a complicated routine in front of thousands of people. It's one of my few faults. The look everyone within earshot gave him had him wondering if he had said something weird. However, everyone suddenly became deathly quiet. Looking towards the source, Naruto saw that Laxus was the reason for the lack of commotion. Except that quiet quickly turned into loud yelling. Did you really think that you could just waltz back in here after what you did? How dare you show your face after what you've done? Hearing nothing but childish whining, Naruto decided to shut everyone up. Clapping his hands together, he used some wind magic to create a strong gust to get everyone's attention on himself. Are you all done about a few small bruises? Because if you aren't, you could just fight Laxus and get it out of your system. That instantly made everyone surrounding Laxus back up a step. In their anger, they forgot that Laxus could still crush them all even with his injuries. Anyway, Gramps in the back, in the infirmary. Seeing Laxus nod as thanks, he began to walk towards the infirmary. Oh, by the way, I want a rematch. I can't accept the fact that I missed out on fighting you by myself. The savage grin on Naruto's face made more than just a few people scoot away from him. However, they were quickly distracted by a mummified Natsu jumping in and screaming through his taped-up mouth. He says, I can't accept winning 3 against 1. I won't lose next time. You better fight me again, Laxus. Gajeel translated. Hey, I challenged him first, Natsu. You'll just have to wait. Turning towards Naruto, Natsu began his muffled screaming again. I'm sorry, what? I couldn't quite catch that. Can you maybe speak clearer? Seeing Natsu turning red with rage, everyone in the guild began to laugh. As Natsu calmed down, he saw Laxus wave goodbye. All right, everyone, let's get ready for the parade. Urza quickly had everyone who was participating begin practicing their routines. Naruto, however, ran out the door. After dragging Naruto back, Fairy Tail began the Fantasia parade. Like always, it was an incredible event with magic, dancing, and laughs. However, what was different this time around was that every member reminded Laxus that no matter where he went, they would always look out for him. As the weeks went on, things began to get back to normal. Fairy Tail was as lively as ever, and in fact began to cause more trouble than usual. Naruto, however, was not concerned with any of that. He was more concerned with trying to understand his tree house. From what he had been able to understand, it was a magical metal substance that could change its shape as needed. Somehow, he and the tree had some sort of mental connection. If he needed something, like a chair, it would grow from the tree and it would disappear once he was done with it. He also learned that the tree had sap. Since this was a magical metal tree, this wasn't ordinary sap. It was magical metal in a strange liquid-like form. The only reason he learned it was metal was because he took some to the guild to be analyzed by anyone who could. Gajeel had smelled it and he drank some of it. From there, Naruto ended up trying to collect the sap to see if he could do anything with it. He was lucky that the tree didn't have a lot of sap, but it was still enough to fill a small container after a few weeks. Naruto put the sap away into his pocket dimension for examination at a later date. He needed to get some missions done. As he walked into the guild, he knew something was wrong. First of all, it was empty. During this time of day was when there was the most activity within the guild. Second of all, Makarov was wearing his formal attire. The coat of a wizard saint. Walking inside, he saw that Makarov was focusing on a lacrima orb in front of him and looking up at a giant chart drawn in the air. Coming up to his side, Naruto could see various members of the guild were fighting some people. Looking up, he read the chart and realized what he was looking at. Fairy Tail was systematically destroying dark guilds. In a moment though, he realized that Fairy Tail wasn't the only guild doing so. Fairy Tail was attacking 6 of the dark guilds associated with Oracion Cease. The other 11 were being destroyed by Blue Pegasus and Lamia Scale. Looking back at the Lacrima, he saw that some of his guild members were having some trouble. It seemed like these guilds were stronger than they thought. Naruto, I need you to go here and destroy that dark guild. Looking at where Makarov was pointing, Naruto saw that Makarov wanted him to destroy the dark guild Gloria. Sure, but isn't this illegal? Naruto himself didn't care what the Magic Council said or did, but he knew that Makarov already got a lot of crap from them. To hell with them. We have always done what we think is right and we will continue to do so until we think otherwise. The grin on Makarov's face was more than enough to make Naruto grin too. Good, just remember that when you get the bill for all of the destruction fairy tale is going to cause. Running from Makarov's giant fist, Naruto left the guild with a smile on his face. Banzai! Naruto yelled as he crashed into the building. Aiming at one of the people inside, he crashed into the surprised wizard and used him as a cushion. Bouncing off the wizard, he punched the first person he saw with a flame-covered fist. Following that up with an iron fist to another unsuspecting wizard. By this time, all of the members of Gloria had realized that they were being attacked. A few of them began sending a barrage of magical attacks at Naruto. Somersaulting away from the attacks, he took a deep breath and roared out, Fire Dragon's Roar. The breath attack was powerful enough to not only defeat a large number of the dark mages, but also overwhelm a large number of magical attacks that had been heading Naruto's way. Once he led up with his breath attack, Naruto put his hands together. Metal Make. Hammer. A plain oversized hammer appeared in Naruto's hands. Swinging it around, Naruto took pleasure from hearing the bodies go crack when he hit them. Off to his side, Naruto spotted three wizards congregating together. Triple Unison Raid. Magma Vortex. The three wizards released a combination fire, earth, and wind magic spell together, resulting in a molten rock tornado heading right towards Naruto. Pumping magic into his hammer, he braced himself and swung. When the head of the hammer met the tornado, he was pushed back. Carving a trench with his feet, Naruto kept pushing his hammer, but he heard cracking sounds. Looking at where the head met the handle, he saw that it was beginning to break under the stress. Reinforcing it with magic did nothing, as the strength of the tornado was damaging the hammer faster than Naruto could fix it. Looking at the molten doom ahead of him and then at his hammer, he gritted his teeth. Metal Make. Launch. Underneath him, a metal platform lifted him away from danger, but once he was out of the way he saw that the tornado was actually following him. Battle Archive. Feeling the magic activate in his eyes, Naruto began to analyze the magic forming the tornado. In an instant, he saw through the spell. It wasn't a true unison raid. A unison raid created magic that was more powerful than its parts. The Magma Vortex spell was created through the combination of a fire spell to melt the earth spell and then the wind spell controlled it. However, he saw the flaws in the spell. The fire spell has to be continually invoked at increasing temperatures to keep the earth spell in its melted state, and the wind spell is constantly cooling the entire structure. As such, the weak link in the entire spell is the fire wizard. Naruto realized as he landed back on the ground. Throwing his hammer up into the air, he threw his hands forward. Splash Cannon. Shooting a sphere of water 3 times his size, he fired it at the tornado. Once it impacted, the sphere broke and the entirety of the water inside splashed out onto the tornado. The water evaporated instantly, but with such a large amount of water the temperature of the molten tornado plummeted and became stone. Jumping up and grabbing his hammer, he pumped it with magic and repaired the cracks it had sustained, and then he drove it into the stone. Breaking through the stone without a problem, he launched himself at the 3 wizards who launched the spell at him. Swinging his hammer, he took them out. Looking around, he saw that the guild had been abandoned. They ran away when he was busy dealing with the tornado. Checking once more, he sighed. I'm gonna have to track them down. XXXXXX. You can't get away. Naruto yelled as he plummeted at the fleeing wizards. Swinging his hammer down, it crashed in between the 3 wizards. Sending them flying in all directions, he left the oversized hammer embedded in the ground. Dashing at one of the still flying wizards, Naruto punched him into the ground. Jumping at another, he was met with a barrage of flying cards. Throwing his right hand forward, he roared, Crash! The cards that were thrown at him were disintegrated in the attack, and reeling his other arm back, he sent it into the face of the card thrower. Back flipping, Naruto avoided the large crystal that was thrown at him. Looking at who threw the crystal, he saw that it was the only girl in the group and the one that was guarding a chest of some sort. If it's in a chest, then it must be important. Deciding to grab the chest after he knocked out the girl, he was forced to dodge the projectiles that kept coming at him. The girl was a good shot, but that was it. Seeing another crystal flying at him, he grabbed it out of the air. Draining the magic from it, he learned that the girl was using a form of make magic. She apparently wasn't very good at it though. However, he could see its potential. The magic could create crystals in all of its natural formations, but the only ones she could make were as weak as glass. A good hit would shatter them. It made him wonder why she was the one who was given the chest. Dodging another barrage, he grew tired of waiting for her to step up. Shinra Tensei, Naruto said, bored as he sent the wave of force at her. Unable to see the attack coming, she was sent into a tree and it knocked her out. Picking up the chest she dropped, Naruto opened it up. Unprepared for the bright glow, he had to blink his eyes to get rid of the spots in them. Focusing, he was able to see that it was strange gold symbol. It was shaped much like a heart, but he wasn't able to tell much beyond that. Whenever he tried to focus on it, it became blurry. Ignoring that, Naruto instead focused on the magic he could feel coming from it. He was unprepared to see the vortex of infinite magic energy inside. So enraptured by it, he didn't hear the warnings coming from his tenant. Touching the heart, Naruto was consumed in a golden light. XXXXXX. Opening his eyes, Naruto saw that he was in some strange place. Everywhere he looked he was surrounded by white. Pushing himself up, he looked himself over and saw that he was perfectly fine. In fact, he felt better than ever. That would be my doing. Turning to the voice he recognized, Naruto saw that he couldn't make out Gabriel's form. Why are you blurry? Naruto asked, squinting and trying to make out anything. Gabriel looked like a fuzzy ball of light. That is all that your limited view of reality allows you to perceive. However, I believe that there are more pressing concerns. Gabriel thought spoke to him. Right. Where are we? Naruto asked as he looked around once more. Currently we are between your world and the next. I believe some people in your world call it heaven. Gabriel thought spoke to Naruto, getting him to freeze. I'm dead, Naruto said quietly as he tried to keep from panicking. No, and you are no longer at the risk of dying young. Gabriel told a panicking Naruto. Wait, you knew about that? Naruto asked, shocked that Gabriel knew about his condition. Of course I did. I knew about your condition the moment I entered your body. Gabriel spoke into Naruto's mind while making him feel dumb for questioning him. Your body was unable to adjust to the vast amount of magic power you had when you were young. As a result, you suffered tremendous pain whenever you used your magic. The real reason you left your village wasn't because someone poisoned the surrounding land. It was so that you could find someone who could help your condition. Unfortunately, by the time you were able to find someone, you were too old for the treatment. Instead, all that could be done was to numb your mind to the pain that you were receiving from your magic container. The spell has been known to fail when you absorb too much magic at once. However, that is now history. The moment you touched the heart, I was restored to full power. This would normally be a moment of celebration, but you ignored my warnings and touched the heart. Instead of slowly draining the heart so that I wouldn't damage your soul, I absorbed the entirety of my power at once and your soul split in two. Gabriel thought spoke to Naruto. Huh, Naruto yelled in fear. Calm yourself. The soul is durable. Your soul will survive and heal itself until it returns to normal. Then what about the other half of my soul? Naruto asked as he tried to wrap his head around what he just heard. I have taken care of it. I sent it to another world. Gabriel thought spoke nonchalantly. Couldn't you have just put it back together? Naruto asked while getting the gist of what happened. Yes, I could have. Then why didn't you? Naruto asked as he began to wonder about Gabriel's sanity. It is all part of the design. Gabriel thought spoke to Naruto, who now wore a puzzled expression. Design? Are you telling me that this was planned? Naruto asked, shocked while staring at Gabriel. It is time for us to part ways. Gabriel suddenly thought spoke. Aren't you going to answer my question? Naruto asked in a hurry and wondering why Gabriel avoided the question. Number. I shall not. Goodbye, Naruto. Gabriel thought spoke before Naruto could say anything. XXXXXX. Sitting up suddenly, Naruto looked around in panic. Recognizing the area as the location he was at before he touched the heart, he noticed that the girl was gone. The other two dark wizards were still here though. Bracing himself, Naruto decided to test what Gabriel had spoken of. Feeling his magic power explode out of him, Naruto was surprised to feel no pain. Pushing even more of his power out, the ground began to shake and he could feel his control slipping. Calming down, Naruto looked at himself in wonder. Gabriel had healed him, but it also made him wonder why he wouldn't answer his question. Shaking his head, Naruto decided to not question it. He was healed and he would live a long time, and hopefully he'd get a girlfriend soon too.
XXXXXX. Wow, all of you look like crap. Naruto said as he looked at his fellow fairy tale mages. Oh, shut up. You got lucky. Macau shot back as he held an ice pack to his head. Yeah, right, you're just getting slow, old man. Naruto said as he crossed his arms and looked at Macau smugly. What did you say, brat? You wanna go? Macau yelled as Wakaba held him back from strangling Naruto. Bring it on. I bet I could beat you no problem. Naruto yelled before getting crushed by a giant fist. No one will be fighting anytime soon. It's a time of rest and recovery. Makarov said before turning his head and whispering, besides Perliuzuka would kill me if I let anyone else get hurt after she's patched everyone up. Perliuzuka? Naruto asked once he pulled himself out of the crater that he'd been crushed into. She's the resident medical expert. She actually treated you after the whole Phantom Lord fiasco. Makarov said as he drank some more of his beer. Really? Why didn't anyone tell me? I would have thanked her. Naruto said as he scratched the back of his head. She's actually still here. She's in the medical wing treating a few of our members. Makarov said as he finished his beer. Mira, I need more beer. Ignoring him, Naruto walked into the medical wing. Looking inside, he saw that Biska and Alzak were getting patched up. Hey, where's Perliuzuka? She's over there, Alzak said as he gestured behind them to the elderly woman who was closing up her bag. Mean old lady, Naruto said as he pointed at Perliuzuka. Turning to the shout, Perliuzuka looked at Naruto and then disregarded him. Hey, I'm talking to you. I came here to say thanks for helping me a few months ago, but don't think I forgot that you threw a book at my face. Oh, be quiet and just enjoy the time you have left, you brat. Perliuzuka said with no venom in her voice. Raising an eyebrow at what she said, Alzak and Biska began to pay attention. What are you talking about? Naruto asked, confused. Your magic container is putting such a stress on your body that you have less than a year to live. Perliuzuka said as she turned to look at Naruto. Oh, don't worry. I got that fixed. Naruto said, waving off her concern. Impossible. The procedure can only be done on young children. Perliuzuka said as she glared at Naruto for lying to her. Yeah, but a friend of mine fixed it. Don't worry. Naruto said as he put his hands on his hips. You, Perliuzuka said while pointing at Naruto, are getting a physical right now. You too, pointing at the eavesdropping duo. Get out. Literally kicking out Biska and Alzak, they could only stare at the closed door as they heard Naruto begin to scream. XXXXXX. So you were dying? Makarov asked as he stared at Naruto. Yeah, but I had years to live. Naruto said, trying to get past the whole thing. Perliuzuka said that you had less than a year to live. Mirajan said as she looked at Naruto and tried to calm her heart. To think that they might have lost someone so young. Okay, so I was off by a few years. The point is that I'm all better now. Naruto said as he tried to ignore the way that Mirajan was looking at him. It made him feel guilty. I understand your wish for secrecy over something like this, however we are your family and as such you should learn to rely on us. You will need to be punished for not confiding in us. Makarov said seriously as he stroked his chin. Fine, but can we please just drop this? I got over the fact that I was gonna have a short lifespan. Right now I want to celebrate the fact that I'm not gonna die young. Naruto said as he scratched the back of his head. You're right, Makarov said as he nodded his head. Standing up he took a deep breath and said, all right you brats. It's time to party. Hearing him proclaim that, all of Fairy Tail began to party once again. XXXXXX. So you were dying, Kana said as she finished her barrel of beer. Even you heard about it? Naruto said as he put his head on counter of the bar. I'd be amazed if anyone in the guild didn't already know about it. Kana said as she picked up a new barrel. Anyway, if you had told us sooner, I would have made sure that you died a man. Kana said with a saucy grin. Gaining wide eyes, Naruto turned his head and looked at Kana. Noticing her flushed face, he realized she was drunk. Well, is your offer is still available? Laughing, Kana had to lean on the bar to keep from falling. Sorry, but now that I know that you're not dying the offer's gone, but hit me up in a few years when you're older. Watching her walk away, he noticed that she was putting an extra bit of sway in her hips. Seeing her look back, he realized that she was doing it on purpose. Grinning, he just enjoyed the view. At least he did until Mirajan tapped him in the shoulder. Looking at her, he noticed the serious expression she wore. Seeing her gesture to the back room, he followed her. Getting inside and taking a seat on a barrel, he saw her close and lock the door. Feeling his heart race, he wondered if she had heard what Kana had said. "Why didn't you tell us?" Mira asked him quietly. Figuring out what she was talking about, Naruto sighed. "Like I said, I was told that I had years to live. At best I'd make it to my mid-30s. At worst I'd die in my 20s. Perliuzuka said you had less than a year." Scratching his head, Naruto had the sense to be embarrassed. "I didn't take into account how much magic I absorbed since I joined Fairy Tail. The more magic I had, the less I lived. I didn't realize that I had actually absorbed so much magic, but don't worry," Naruto said, trying to keep her from crying. "I'm all better now, even Perliuzuka said so. I won't be dying anytime soon. If anything, I'll die an old man." Naruto finished as he laughed a bit. Crossing the distance between them, Mira hugged him as she began to cry. Freaking out, Naruto just hugged her and rubbed her back. Though he did blush a bit when he realized that she was wearing a backless dress and that her s were pushing against his chest. After a bit, Mirajan stopped crying, but didn't stop hugging him. Naruto, having gotten rid of his blush, just held her. He was confused about what he was supposed to do, but he didn't have to think on it long as she let go a bit after. However, he got confused once again when she grabbed his face. Blinking, he wondered if she was gonna go demon, like a few of the other members said she used to. However, what she did was nothing like what he expected. She kissed him. It was a quick chaste kiss, but it was enough to make Naruto's blush return full force. Wide-eyed and face as red as Urza's hair, he could only look at Mira in surprise. "Don't forget that we're a family. No matter what you need, we'll always be here." Nodding as that was all he could do, he saw her leave the back room. A minute later, Naruto finally found his voice. "What the was that?" XXXXXX. The following day, Naruto still had trouble looking at Mira, but it was put at the back of his mind when the Oración Cease Destruction team arrived. Though they came with 2 extra people. "So you're the Sky Dragon Slayer?" Naruto asked Wendy once she was no longer surrounded by the rest of the guild. "Ah, yes. I was trained by Grandini," Wendy said with a smile. Next to her, Carla was looking at Naruto with narrowed eyes. "I'm guessing Grandini raised you too?" Naruto asked while resting his head on the back of chair. "Yeah, but she disappeared." Seeing the sad look Wendy got on her face, Naruto knew he had to steer the conversation in a different direction. "Are you liking the guild so far?" "Oh yes, everyone is so nice. It's actually really fun," Wendy said with a smile. "That's good to hear. If you ever need any help, don't hesitate to ask," Naruto said back with a smile as he stood up. "Natsu, you and me, let's go," Naruto yelled as he pointed dramatically at Natsu. "Hell yeah," Natsu said before charging at Naruto with a flame-covered fist. However, he was stopped short by a massive fist. "Fight later. Right now we party," Makarov slurred out as he danced on a table. Seeing the crater Natsu was in, Naruto relented. They could fight later. XXXXXX. "So, are you gonna show me how much better your Dragon Slayer magic has gotten?" Natsu said as he stretched. "Well, I was thinking we'd just fight and see what happens," Naruto said as he activated Battle Archive. It had been a while since he fought Natsu. "Well then, let's go," Natsu said as he launched himself before Makarov even said go. Swinging his arm out, Naruto yelled, "Requip, hammer." Swinging his oversized metal hammer, Naruto smacked Natsu up into the sky. Jumping after him, Naruto tried to swing his hammer down on Natsu, but he kicked Naruto in the face as retaliation. Back-flipping onto the ground, Naruto held the hammer off to his side. Natsu was too fast to hit with the hammer more than once. Now he would be expecting it. Unless, Naruto thought as he narrowed his eyes, I sped the hammer up. Channeling his magic into the hammer, Naruto jumped and swung the hammer, but mid-swing he released the magic he channeled as fire magic. Getting a boost mid-swing allowed Naruto to once again hit Natsu. However, this time the force he hit him with was much higher. This sent Natsu rocking up into the sky. Activating Era, he flew after him. Once again above him, Naruto knew that Natsu was expecting him to smack him down, except that he had an idea. Channeling Titan magic into the hammer, it grew to titanic proportions. Swinging it down, Naruto smirked when he saw the scared look Natsu expressed. The force of the strike was far larger than either of the ones before, and when Natsu crashed back into the ground, it created a crater. Following through with his swing made Naruto make a few flips in midair from the inertia of the hammer. Shrinking it down, Naruto managed to get himself under control. Landing on the ground, Naruto ignored the crowd around them. Waiting for Natsu to spring up, Naruto noticed that he wasn't moving. Inching himself over slowly, he poked Natsu with his foot. Seeing no reaction, he looked at Natsu's face and saw that he was unconscious. Woohoo! I won, Naruto said as he threw his hammer into the sky. All around him, the guild couldn't keep their shock off their faces. Natsu was strong. To be beaten in 3 hits was crazy. Oh my god, Naruto's a bigger monster than Natsu. Lucy cried out when she saw Natsu get beaten. Naruto beat Natsu up when he couldn't even finish the fight when he first joined. Gray said as he tried to keep the fear off his face. Alright then, it's time to fight a man. Elfman yelled as Get got into the circle that was to serve as the battlefield. Turning to his new opponent, Naruto lit his hands up with lightning. However, he then unveiled a spell he'd been working on. With a yellow magic seal appearing underneath him, Naruto's skin began turning yellow as scales developed on his body. Lightning Dragon Scales. Well, what are you waiting for, Elfman? Naruto taunted when he saw Elfman freeze in shock. Shaking off his shock, Elfman yelled, Beast Arm, Iron Bull. Seeing Elfman charging at him, Naruto braced himself. Crossing his arms, he took the hit. The ground underneath him cracked a bit, but Naruto was unharmed. Smirking at the shocked look Elfman had, Naruto released a burst of lightning sending Elfman flying away. Putting his hands together, he drew them apart and created a halberd composed of lightning halberd. Twirling the halberd, he aimed it at Elfman. Seeing the halberd and remembering what it did to Laxus, Elfman moved cautiously. However, Naruto wasn't going to take things slow. Utilizing high speed, Naruto shot forwards towards Elfman. Naruto ducked under a swing and he jabbed his halberd at Elfman. Unable to move out of the way, he took the full force of the lightning halberd. Pulling the halberd away from Elfman, Naruto watched him topple over. Woo. That's 2. Who's next? XXXXXX. Lying unconscious after taking a beating from Makarov, Naruto didn't hear the conversation that occurred between Murajan and Makarov. It's incredible that simply being cured of his condition has made him such a better fighter. Shaking his head, Makarov corrected her. It's not that he's become a better fighter. It's that he's no longer scared about using his magic power. You remember what he said about his magic container. If he used too much, it'd cause him pain. He might not feel it, but his body still registered it. Now though, he doesn't have to hold back anymore. He can now channel the entirety of his magic power into his spells. You saw how he enlarged his hammer, correct? That requires more magic power than most wizards have. Oh, so then he can now overwhelm his opponents when before he had to outmaneuver them. That's pretty incredible, Murajan said as she looked at the hammer that was lodged into the ground next to her. Around her were the unconscious bodies of other mages. They had decided to see how many people Naruto could beat in a row, and as a result Fairy Tail had lost about a fifth of its workforce. Makarov decided to end it when Naruto defeated Max. Of course, Makarov hadn't been expecting Naruto to not only take the hit, but remain standing and challenge him to a fight. After that though, Makarov crushed him, but it was interesting to see that Naruto could actually take a hit from him. Now, what am I gonna do with all these bodies? Makarov asked himself as he saw that everyone was now unconscious. XXXXXX. So this is healing magic? Naruto asked as Wendy healed his swollen eye. He had already activated his battle archive, so that he could analyze it, but he could only analyze it with one eye as the other was being healed. Wendy nodded, but kept from looking him in the eye as the solid orange color was unnerving as she didn't know where to look. It was even more unnerving than his ringed purple eyes. It's incredible, Naruto said as he saw the way the magic worked. He had seen an incredible amount of magics, but none were as intricate as this. Thank you, Wendy said as she finished healing his eye. Blinking, Naruto touched his eye. It was still a bit tender, but he could actually see out of it now. Smiling at Wendy, she smiled back before moving on to the other members who still needed some treatment. Seeing her leave, Naruto brought up his hand. Focusing, he began to imitate Wendy's healing magic. It was a lot more difficult than almost anything else he had used. It also required a fair bit of magic power to maintain, but that wasn't really a problem for him. Letting it go, he sighed as the strain disappeared. It required intense focus, and at the moment he didn't need to use it. Standing up from the bench he was sitting on, Naruto left the guild hall. He needed to do some experimentation again. XXXXXX. Sitting in his tree, Naruto looked at the archive screens with all of the information he had gathered about Dragon Slayer magic. This time he had 3 sources of information to draw upon. Looking at Natsu, Gajeel, and even Wendy using Dragon Slayer magic was interesting. Without even telling his archive, it began to find the common factors between all 3 of the Slayers. This information was being compiled on a completely separate screen. However, once it finished, another screen opened up and it showed the instance when Natsu had scales. The information gathered from this sample was apparently incredible as the screen compiling the information exploded into action. Seeing the information being compiled, Naruto had to blink and wonder if this was normal for archive. He only had met one other wizard who could use archive, and he hadn't really told him much beyond the basics. Shrugging, Naruto decided not to question it. It just made his magic even more unique. Seeing the compiling window stopped being active, he touched it. Opening up even more, Naruto began to read through the information and realized that what he now had was pure Dragon Slayer magic. It had no element attached to it. Getting an idea, Naruto closed all of the other windows and brought up all the elemental magic he knew. Creating multiple copies of the pure Dragon Slayer magic, he moved them over the elemental magic screens. Seeing the screens begin to combine the information, he leaned back and waited. Thankfully, he didn't have to wait long as the screens finished quickly. Looking at the new screens, he saw that they now had titles. Water Dragon Slayer Magic, Wind Dragon Slayer Magic, Earth Dragon Slayer Magic, Ice Dragon Slayer Magic, Light Dragon Slayer Magic, Darkness Dragon Slayer Magic. Grinning like a fool, Naruto focused and he felt his hand become engulfed with water along with the familiar feeling of Dragon Slayer magic flowing through him. Letting it dissipate, Naruto opened up a list of all of the magic he could use. However, he stopped at the section about his Rinnegan. Looking at the list of magic he could use, Naruto tried to activate the Asura path, but couldn't. Moving on to the rest, he found the same result. Frowning, Naruto wondered why he was unable to use any of them, except for the Diva path. He had been able to use that one since he was a child. Sighing, he left it alone. It could wait. He had time to research it later. Closing those, he looked through the list again, but he stopped on Flame Godslayer magic. Opening it up, he saw that it was very sparse. It mentioned its ability to hurt spirits, the black flames, and the ability to eat flames much like a dragon slayer. Looking at it, Naruto wondered if he could synthesize the rest of the missing information. From what he knew, it was very similar to Dragon Slayer magic, so maybe he could just transplant that information over. Opening up a window with Dragon Slayer magic, he dragged that information over to the empty God Slayer magic and he waited. However, instead of his archive exploding into action like it did before, it went slow. A few lines of information would be written, before they were erased, and then new lines were formed. This happened continuously, but Naruto noticed that it was actually gaining some sort of progress. Scratching his cheek, he realized that his archive would probably take a while to do this, so it'd be best to leave it be. XXXXXX. Where's Wendy at? Naruto asked as he had wanted to go on a job with the newest member. She and Natsu went after a stupid rumor about a dragon. Gajeel said in his usual gruff tone. If there was a dragon anywhere near here, we'd all be dead. Naruto replied as he sat down on a stool at the bar. Raising an eyebrow at the statement, Gajeel asked, what makes you say that? During the era of dragons, humans were the food source for dragons. Naruto said as he ordered a drink from Miragen. How the hell do you know that? Gajeel asked, completely surprised. He had known that dragons ruled the world hundreds of years ago, but he hadn't known that they ate people. The woman who took care of me when I was younger was a historian. She was really knowledgeable about the era of dragons. Naruto said with a smile as he remembered his caretaker. Sounds like she was really smart. Gajeel said, catching on to what Naruto was subtly saying. She really was, but God, you didn't want to piss her off. She'd smack you around if you did. Naruto said as he remembered mouthing off to her once. She had smacked him up and down the house until he apologized. Ha ha ha. Sounds like she was the perfect caretaker. Gajil said as he laughed at Naruto's scared face. Hearing the guild door being smacked open, Naruto turned his head and saw Urza walking in. Sup Urza. If you're looking for Natsu, he took Wendy to chase down a rumor about a dragon. No, I'm not looking for him, but thank you for the information. I came here to inform the master that I was attacked. Urza said as she crossed her arms across her armored chest. Who'd be crazy enough to attack you? Besides Natsu? Naruto asked as he turned the stool around to look at her. I'm not really sure. They were covering their face, but they were able to use requip when they fought me. Urza said as she recounted her fight. Not many people can use requip in a fight. Naruto said as he tried to figure out if he knew any criminals that used requip. Nodding to his answer, Urza replied, that's why I wanted to inform the master about it. Well, he should be in his office writing another apology letter. Mirajan said cheerfully as she cleaned some mugs. Seeing Urza walk towards the office, Naruto wondered who would be crazy enough to try and attack Urza. However, his thoughts were derailed when Gajil asked him, so, what else did your caretaker tell you about the Dragon Era? Grinning at hearing the genuine curiosity, Naruto replied, well, there was a dragon civil war if you can believe it. Seriously? Dragons fighting each other? Damn, that'd be terrifying. Gajil said as he imagined Metallicana fighting another dragon. Yeah, but after that not much is known. Historical records during that time are even harder to find than ones during the era of dragons. Naruto said as Mirajan served him a drink. Smiling at her, and successfully keeping his blush down for the first time since she kissed him, he thanked her. Watching her walk away, Naruto didn't hear Gajil ask him a question. Though he felt it when Gajil smacked him. Holding his head, Naruto turned to him with a shocked expression. What the hell, man? Pay attention when I'm asking you a question. Gajil said as he rubbed his fist. Naruto's head was hard. What? Naruto asked, angry that he was interrupted, ogling Mirajan. I asked what else you knew. Gajil replied while looking away. Grinning, Naruto told him what little he knew about the era of dragons. XXXXXX. I don't like being told to stay behind. Naruto pouted as he leaned against a table. I know, but there's a reason why I asked you to stay behind. Makarov said as he waited for Elfman, Mikao, and Wakaba to return with Gray. Like what? Naruto asked as he turned a stink eye towards him. Currently, you have the most magic power in the entirety of the guild. Should it come to it, I expect you to use it to defend Magnolia. Makarov said as he looked at Naruto. Well duh, I can't believe you thought you needed to tell me that. Naruto said as people from the city began to come into the guild for safety. Chuckling a tiny bit, Makarov smirked at Naruto. It's good to hear that, my boy. Now, get ready. Sending a confused look at Makarov, Naruto's eyes widened when he felt the magical energy nearby. Pushing himself off the table, Naruto ran outside the guild. Looking out over the horizon, he could see the dragonoid that Makarov was talking about earlier. Can we protect the town and the guild hall at the same time? Levi asked out loud when she saw the dragon flying near Magnolia. Master has some kind of strategy, right? Jet asked Mirajan as she was the one who was usually in the loop about these things. He wants to wait until he's had the chance to talk to Gray. Mirajan said as she nervously waited for her brother to arrive with Gray. What good is that gonna do when we don't even know if the guys were able to capture him? We can't wait here twiddling our thumbs. Kana said as she put a hand to her face to try and hold off the oncoming headache. I'll keep the dragon outside the city. Naruto said, suddenly causing everyone to look at him like he was crazy. Are you crazy? That thing will kill you. Kana said angrily while staring at him like he was crazy. I'll be fine. All of you just make sure that the citizens are safe. Naruto said before activating his era and flying off towards the flying dragon. Taking deep breaths, Naruto realized that the fight he was about to have was nothing like the ones he's had before. While he doubted that the thing had the true strength of a dragon, it was still dangerous. Bringing up his magic power to the surface, Naruto was surrounded in a corona of blue light. Focusing his mind, he shouted, Shinra Tensei. The power of this Shinra Tensei was beyond anything that Naruto had ever tried before. Anything that was in front of his hands was pulverized. Large sections of forest were leveled as the wave of repulsive force made its way towards the fake dragon. When it reached the dragonoid, the construct was instantly pushed back into the mountains that it flew over. As it crashed into the mountain, Naruto activated his battle archive. Looking at the machine, Naruto was able to see that it was gathering power from the orb in its chest. Naruto, did you do that? Turning his head, Naruto saw that Urza was flying next to him wearing her black wing armor. Yeah, where did you come from? I was on its back. I felt your magical power and jumped off just before you sent it flying. Urza told an embarrassed Naruto. Oh, I am so sorry. I didn't know you were on its back. Naruto said as he apologized. It's fine. I was trying to stop it, but your attack did more than any of mine. Urza said as she looked back to the downed Dragonoid. So, any idea about what's powering this thing? I know that it's getting power from the orb in its chest, but what's in there? Naruto asked as he saw the Dragonoid getting back up. Natsu is in there. He's being used as the power source. Urza said as the Dragonoid began to jerk around. It looks like Natsu is trying to overload it. Though, he's going to need a lot more power than what he's putting out if he wants to be successful. Naruto said as he saw the Dragonoid already adapting to the increase in power.
Any idea about how to get him out of there? Urza asked as she readied her sword as the Dragonoid began to flap its wings so that it could take off. Yeah. We smashed that orb. However, it's using Dragon Slayer magic as a power source, so only Dragon Slayer magic can actually damage it. Naruto said as he began to gather magic so that he could begin to attack it. So then my attacks wouldn't do anything? Urza asked, frustrated at being unable to do anything. The only way you'd be able to damage it is if you used a large amount of magic power to break through its defenses. Unfortunately, if you did that you wouldn't have any power left. Unless... Naruto trailed off as he looked at Urza's sword. Can I see your sword for a moment? Naruto asked as he held out his hand. Raising an eyebrow at what he was asking, she gave her sword to him. Grabbing it and examining it through his battle archive, he saw how the magic was flowing through the sword. Gathering pure Dragon Slayer magic, he began to weave it into the sword. Making sure that the magic already in the sword didn't conflict with the Dragon Slayer magic, he was able to successfully integrate the magic perfectly. Swinging it once, he smirked as he felt the magic hum within it. Handing it back to Urza, Naruto smirked when he saw her gain a surprised expression on her face. It should be able to damage the Dragonoid now. I'll draw its attention. You get Natsu out of that sphere. Without waiting for her to agree, Naruto took off. Taking a deep breath, he yelled, Water Dragon's Roar. Like the other dragon roars, the Water Dragon's Roar released a whirlpool of magic water at the Dragonoid which pushed it back onto the ground. However, unlike the other roars, the magic water was moving at such a rapid speed that it began to cut away at the Dragonoid's skin. Stopping the roar, Naruto looked down and was surprised to see that the Dragonoid had taken such massive damage. It seemed that it didn't really have much defensive power beyond Natsu's Dragon Slayer magic. That was interesting to know. Ha! Looking for the source of the yell, Naruto saw Urza speeding down towards the orb. With a few quick slashes, she was able to shatter it and free Natsu. However, he looked exhausted. As he was about to attack the weakened Dragonoid, Naruto felt Warren reach into his mind. Don't destroy the Dragonoid. Stumbling in midair, Naruto righted himself and asked, why not? It's weakened and I could probably get it in one blow. Natsu made a promise years ago to save a city, but he forgot about it. It's his responsibility to save them and Master is saying to get him to fix his mistake. Warren replied to Naruto, who just sighed. Only a dumbass like Natsu would forget about a promise like that, Naruto said to himself before flying down to where Urza was shaking Natsu like a ragdoll. How could you forget something that important? You promised that you'd save them and then you go and forget. That's not how fairy tale works and you know it. Now go fulfill your responsibility, Urza said before kicking Natsu towards the downed Dragonoid. Come on, Naruto said before grabbing Natsu and flying up into the sky. Dragging him through the air, Naruto threw him up into the air above the downed Dragonoid. Gathering the most powerful fire magic he could conjure into both of his hands, Naruto clasped them together. Once clasped together, the flames changed color from their normal orange to bright white. Throwing the white ball of flames at Natsu, it exploded in size, bathing the town of Magnolia in light bright enough to light up the sky. Seeing the flames being devoured by Natsu, Naruto backed off and grabbed Urza even though she protested. However, when she heard Natsu yell, she stopped. Hidden Fire Form, Crimson Lotus, Phoenix Blade. Turning to look at Natsu, Naruto was surprised to see Natsu bathed in the white flames that he had eaten. Seeing Natsu rocket up higher into the sky, Naruto took off as fast as he could towards the guild hall. Looking back, he saw the flames engulfing Natsu transform into an arrow, and as he reached the guild hall, Natsu crashed straight into the dragonoid. Seeing a pillar of white fire fly into the sky, Naruto quickly covered Urza with his body while forming a barrier of stone around the whole guild hall. Ignoring Urza's protest, he braced himself for the boom that was sure to follow, and he wasn't disappointed when it reached them. Feeling the earth shake, Naruto looked up at the stone barrier and reinforced it with his magic when he saw it beginning to crack. Still holding Urza, he kept reinforcing the barrier for another few seconds after the earth stopped shaking. Staying still for a few more seconds, he slowly got off Urza as she re-equipped her normal armor. Seeing people coming out of the guild hall, Naruto made a small hole to look outside. Eyes widening at the scene, he gulped and hoped that Makarov wouldn't hold it against him. Turning to look at all of the people waiting for him to lower the barrier, he decided not to say anything and hoped that Natsu would take all of the blame. Lowering the barrier, he heard the resounding gasp coming from the crowd behind him. All of Magnolia had been charred a bit. Everywhere they looked, they saw everything covered in a small layer of ash. Thankfully, no buildings had been destroyed, but there was property damage everywhere. Naruto was more than sure that all of the buildings would have to be inspected for fire damage. However, his internal thoughts took a back seat when he saw Natsu walking towards the guild dragging someone. When Natsu threw the charred body forward, Naruto poked it with his foot. Getting a small groan from the body told him that it was still alive. "So, who's this?" Naruto said as he now actually looked at Natsu and saw the change he had undergone. "And what happened to you?" Blinking at Naruto's question, Natsu looked at himself and saw that he had scales. "Oh, this again. It's Dragon Force. Your fire probably activated it. It'll wear off in a bit. Anyway, this is Daphne. She's the one who made the dragonoid." Seeing Daphne's body still twitching, he decided to ignore her in favor of studying Natsu's transformation. "I'm guessing Dragon Force has something to do with Dragon Slayer magic?" "Yeah, but I don't really know much about it. I've only activated twice," Natsu said before beginning to walk towards Makarov. Looking at Natsu as he walked away, Naruto wondered if any of his Dragon Slayer magics would be able to activate Dragon Force. XXXXXX. I'm amazed the damage to the town was repaired so easily, Naruto said as he spoke to Makarov. "It was mostly just cosmetic damage, and that's simple enough to fix with a few wizards at your disposal," Makarov said as he drank from his mug. "You volunteered the guild to do it for free so we wouldn't get blamed, didn't you?" Naruto asked with a smirk. "I'm old. I don't want to write more apology letters. I'll end up getting arthritis," Makarov yelled out before looking at Naruto with narrowed eyes. "Don't think I didn't see that you weren't helping with the repairs," Makarov whispered to Naruto as he tried to make it seem like he was in trouble. "Hey, I went on a job. I told Mira and everything. Besides, spending a week in the desert was hell. You get sand everywhere, and no matter how well you think you got it out, you'll always find more," Naruto said as he dusted his shoulder off and sand fell off. "I'm just playing my boy. I knew you went off on a job, though I see that you seem to prefer monster hunting jobs," Makarov said as he tried to drink from his mug only to see that it was empty. "I'm really good at them. Plus, now that I learned to use healing magic, I don't have to worry about injuries," Naruto said as he shook his hair and more sand came out. "How is that you can heal yourself, but Wendy can't?" Makarov asked as he had seen Wendy be unable to heal herself. "I think it has to do with Dragon Slayers being unable to eat their own attacks. Like how Natsu can't eat his own fire, Wendy can't heal herself with her magic," Naruto said as he saw that he was beginning to make a small sand mountain next to him. "But don't you also use Dragon Slayer magic?" Makarov asked as he got a refill from Mirajane and Naruto got his food. "Yeah, but I don't have it activate all the time. I can choose when to have it activate, and as a result, when I don't have any sort of Dragon Slayer magic active, I can heal myself. It's really handy," Naruto said as he dug into the delicious meal Mirajane made for him. "I also seem to recall that Urza said that you used a water dragon spell," Makarov said quietly as to not draw attention. Continuing to eat his food, Naruto thought over his response before saying, "I've seen Natsu, Gajeel, and Wendy using Dragon Slayer magic. As a result, I have 3 sources to draw information from about how it works. I know Laxus is one too, but I barely saw him use it, so I don't really have anything on him. Anyway, by seeing how all 3 of them use their magic, I was able to figure out how to use a form of neutral Dragon Slayer magic. However, I didn't know about Dragon Force. I had only seen Natsu enter it once before at the Tower of Heaven and I kept that information in my archive. It wasn't until Natsu activated it when he fought the Dragonoid that I learned what it was called and what it could actually do. Naruto finished before going back to his food. Does this mean that your Dragon Slayer magic was unfinished? Makarov asked as he took a large swig of his mug. It could do what it needed to do, which is hurt dragons, but I wouldn't have been able to enter Dragon Force no matter what. Except now that I've seen Natsu in it close-up for a long period of time, I'm pretty sure that whatever flaws my Dragon Slayer magic had have been fixed and I could be considered a genuine Dragon Slayer now. Naruto stated with a grin which Makarov shared. As he prepared to stand up, Makarov spoke to him. Remember that the flower party is in a few days. Something about the cherry blossoms, right? Naruto asked as he dusted his leg off and even more sand came out. Yup, and we usually don't get too many requests because people know how we get during this time of the year. Makarov said before seeing all the sand that Naruto left behind. And take all of this damn sand with you. Using sand magic, Naruto grabbed all of the sand he had left and put it away in his re-equipped dimension. Doing so reminded Naruto that he should expand his dimension with Arc of Space. It also reminded him that he still hadn't really done anything with his Arc of Space. At least he wouldn't be bored in the next few days as he trained with it. I don't know whether that's a legal move or not, Mirajane said as she saw Naruto pop back out of the portal he created. There wasn't any rule against it, he said with a grin as he tossed the scale in his hand up and down. Well, I guess this means you win, Naruto, although it really wasn't in the spirit of the race. Makarov finished with some grumbling. Seeing how everyone was disappointed, Naruto sighed. Fine. I'll run the race, but only on the condition that I don't have to do the punishment if I lose. After all, I did get the scale and I was here first. Staring each other down, neither Makarov or Naruto looked willing to give in. At least until Mirajane spoke up. Naruto, please, just do this over again? Looking at her, Naruto felt his resolve crumble. Fine, you don't have to guilt me into it, Mira. I'll run it. Dropping the scale into her hands, he lined back up at the starting line. Hearing the roar of approval from the crowd made him feel slightly better, but it wasn't until Mira kissed his cheek did he start smiling, for luck. Well, I wouldn't want to waste the good luck you just gave me, he said with a smirk before he crouched down. Gathering his magic, he didn't notice that he began to glow blue, high speed. Launching off with an even greater shockwave than jets, he took off, running as fast as he could. He quickly caught up with the tail end of the racers. Turning his head to look at them, he saw Happy struggling to keep up. Usually he would have gone back to help, but everyone was a rival at the moment and as such he left them in his dust. Continuing his run, it didn't take long before he reached the middle group and left them behind too. However, he noticed that it took about 3 times longer to reach the front group than it did the other groups. Getting in front of them, he saw Urza and winked at her, and even though she was wearing sunglasses, he saw her eyebrows rise. It seemed that she could track him even when he was moving as quick as he was. Smirking, he continued running until he saw a dust cloud in front of him. Channeling even more magic, he soon caught up and ran past Jet. Laughing when he saw the look of surprise, he purposely launched a large dust cloud at him. Not staying to see the aftermath, he kept on running until he saw Mount Ivor in the distance. Running towards the peak, he grabbed another wyvern scale and took off back towards Magnolia. XXXXXX. It seems like the cameras couldn't even see who had reached the mountain. Mira commented into the microphone that Jason held in his hand. It's so cool. Hearing his catchphrase let Mira know that he was about to go on a long speech about coolness. It was Naruto, wasn't it, Master? She asked Makarov, who was drinking his beer. I hope not. This is supposed to be a 24-hour race, he said with a blush on his face. Seeing him slightly drunk let Mira know that he wouldn't really be doing much commentary. XXXXXX, seriously? Naruto asked out loud as he crossed the finish line. Expecting a big cheering ovation, he instead received nothing. I went and did this stupid race for them and then when I finish they're not even here to congratulate me. Bunch of jerks. He grumbled as he walked back towards the guild. Whining and complaining the entire way there, he was ready to chew everyone out when he slammed the doors open. However, instead he was surprised when he was greeted with a large banner that said congratulations, and from the looks of it, the entire town was there to party. Congratulations on winning first place and setting a new record, Mira sang from the stage. Let's party, Naruto said as jumped into the crowd. XXXXXX, someone go kill the sun, Naruto complained as he covered his eyes with his arm. All around him, he heard the sounds of people waking up. Hearing everything get louder, he decided to get up as well. Grabbing a table, he pushed himself up and realized that he was surrounded by mugs. Lifting one up to his nose and smelling it, he realized it reeked of alcohol. As he grabbed some of the others, he came to the realization that he had gotten drunk the night before, except that as he looked around he wasn't the only one that had gotten drunk. Makarov was hanging from the rafters by his pants and still asleep. A few other people were placed all over in varying states of undress. However, Jason, of all people, was still commenting on the race. If nothing else, he was really dedicated to the race commentary. Looking around he noticed that Mira was missing. Scratching his head, he put his other hand in his pocket when he felt something in it. Pulling it out, he quickly put it back in when he realized it was Lacey woman's underwear. Checking around to see if anyone saw and confirming that no one had, he ran into the basement. Closing the door and locking it behind him, he found Mira. She was asleep on a cot. Walking over to her, he shook her gently awake. The moment she opened her eyes though, she quickly shut them again. It seemed that she had a hangover too. Drank too much? Naruto teased as he felt his own hangover return after being temporarily forgotten. Oh, please don't talk. I just need quiet, she whispered as she massaged her temples. Getting an idea, he put his hands on her head and focused on the healing magic he had recently learned. It wasn't easy, but in a matter of moments his hands were glowing a light green. He could tell it was having some sort of effect as Myra's face turned from a grimace to more of a light frown. Oh please, don't stop. Continuing the treatment, Naruto decided it was safe to talk to her. What do you remember from last night? I just have a gigantic blank for most of last night. Still keeping her eyes closed, Mira spoke softly. I remember that we were partying, but after a while things just start getting blurry. So you didn't spike everyone's drink? He asked with surprise as he was sure that Mira had served the drinks. I wouldn't serve alcohol to just anyone. You know that. Mira defended as she finally opened her eyes. Then how the hell did everyone get drunk? He asked himself as he tried to remember more of the night. I don't know, but I intend to find out, she said as she stood up and wobbled a bit. When she took a step however, she started looking around. Seeing her look all over the place, Naruto asked, what are you looking for? You haven't seen anything black and lacy, have you? It's mine and it's missing, she asked with a slight blush. Black and lacy? Naruto thought before he looked at his pocket. Pulling out the underwear, he held it in front of himself. Is this it? Eyes widening, an embarrassed Mira quickly grabbed them and turning around she put them back on. Why did you have them? Blushing from the fact that Mira just put her underwear back on in front of him, regardless of the fact that she still had her dress on, he answered, I woke up with them in my pocket. Looking at him with narrowed eyes, they quickly widened and she turned and walked out the basement. Weird. Naruto said as he sat on the cot and decided to go back to sleep. XXXXXX, so it was Kana? Naruto asked as he saw that Mira was looking over the inventory list. Yeah, she messed with the inventory list when she was bartending. Mira explained as she had Naruto move a few barrels. Wait, that was a while ago. She had all of this set up in advance? He asked setting the last barrel down and Mira checked it off from the list. Yup. She had these mislabeled and then she was going to buy them to keep in her apartment, she said as Naruto sat down on top of the barrels. Wow. That's sneaky. He was completely amazed at the lengths Kana would go to get her alcohol. She probably did it because Master limits how many barrels she can drink a week, but juice doesn't have a limit, she said as she began to plan punishments for Kana. Shaking his head, he decided that since they were alone, it'd be best to ask the question that had been occupying his mind this entire time. Why did I have your underwear in my pocket? Getting embarrassed, Mira giggled. Well, I remembered a bit from last night. After we all got drunk, you carried me down to the cellar to sleep. I thanked you by giving you my underwear. You're a weird drunk, aren't you? Naruto deadpanned as he tried to wrap his mind around that. Giggling some more, Mira went to speak with the master. XXXXXX. You know I trained really hard trying to master that arc of space spell. Naruto grumbled as he laid his head on the bar. Wait, you only know the one spell? Mira asked as she paused washing the mugs. Yeah, it's really difficult to actually use. It has a lot to do with math, spatial dimensions, and coordinates. Using it too much gives me a really bad migraine. He admitted as he flinched remembering a few nights when he overused the spell and suffered for it. I'm guessing math really isn't your specialty? Mira teased a bit when he flinched. It's not that, though I'm not great at it, but the kind of math that Arc of Space uses is really advanced. Hell, I didn't even know it existed and I'm just forcing my way through. I'm pretty sure that if I actually learned how to do the math it'd be easier, but I don't really want to," he said as he started spacing out. Getting hit on his head with a wooden spoon quickly brought him back, however. That is no way for a wizard of fairy tale to act. Holding his head in shock that she smacked him, he couldn't come up with anything to say. Not mastering the magic you use because it's too hard is no excuse. The moment you became a fairy tale guild member you made a promise to everyone here to protect them with all your strength. "Okay, I'll go study," he said quickly so that she didn't keep tearing into him. Watching him go, Mira started cleaning the mugs viciously as she tried to keep the memories that were brought up at bay. XXXXXX. Why does guild arts sound so familiar? Naruto asked out loud as the city started going into the guild arts shift. "You and him both use crash magic," Ursa said as she observed the guild go crazy. "I'm pretty sure you two have probably met sometime down the line." "Crash magic?" he asked as the memories started coming back to him. "That's how your magic works, right? You need to see the magic in action in order for you to actually be able to reproduce it," Ursa asked for clarification. "Mira said that he just ends up destroying everything in front of him?" Naruto asked as he started clenching his hands into fists. Looking at him gave Ursa an unsettling feeling. It unsettled her so much that she stepped back away from him. Hearing footsteps, everyone in the guild turned toward the front entrance. Walking in with his bag over his shoulder, Guildarts looked around like he was lost. However, a moment later, he snapped his head in front of himself and raised his arm to block. Appearing in front of him in a blur, Naruto thrust his hand forward screaming, "Shinra Tensei." Completely unprepared, Guildarts was sent flying out of the guild. Taking off after him, Naruto didn't pay attention to the shouts of surprise behind him. All he had in his mind was beating the crap out of Guildarts. XXXXXX. What the heck just happened? Lucy screamed as she tried to get her bearings after that massive attack. "I have no idea, but we have to stop Naruto. Guildarts isn't good at holding back and could seriously hurt him," Ursa stated as she ran out the guild with everyone following. Once outside though, everyone stopped. Everyone in the guild had seen Naruto use his Shinra Tensei countless times, but they all knew it was an attack that went out as a wave in front of him. It had never been directional, except that seeing that the city itself wasn't damaged that was no longer the case. "Well, at least the city wasn't damaged, Master," Mira said to Makarov who was observing the distant battle. "That's true, but I'm more concerned over why Naruto just exploded like that," he wondered as he felt the magic from the battle begin to escalate. "From what I understand, he and Guildarts didn't have that great of a first impression," Ursa supplied as the explosions in the distance multiplied in number. "Oh great. It's one of those," Makarov complained as he remembered countless times that Guildarts had gone and caused some sort of trouble. "Well, let's go break it up," he said as he began to walk at a sedate pace. It wasn't like Naruto was actually going to hurt Guildarts anyway. XXXXXX, kid. I'm really not good at holding back, so can you please stop? Guildarts asked for what seemed like the 10th time. Just like the previous times though, all he got was a guttural scream. This time however, the kid gained an extra 4 arms. "Well, that's a first," Guildarts said out loud as the kid charged at him again. Tossing the kid over his shoulder, he sent out a wave of disassembly magic in order to break the lightning the kid sent in retaliation. "All right kid, I let you have your fun, but now it really is time to stop." Seeing the kid not even listen, he sighed. Drawing upon all of his magic power, he unleashed it. Instantly the kid's anger seemed to vanish. Seeing the kid take a few steps back, he reined his magic back. Taking a step forward, the kid began to scramble backwards. "Crap, I think I overdid it," he said as the kid seemed ready to pass out from fear. XXXXXX. Moving slowly, Naruto stealthily made his way toward the request board. Making sure his magic was keeping him invisible, he grabbed one of the jobs and made his way toward Mirajane behind the bar. Taping her thigh, he handed her the job. "You do know that you're going to have to talk to him, right?" she asked as she filed his job. "No, all I have to do is wait for him to leave. He leaves for long periods of time. I can't wait him out," he explained with a grin as Mira just shook her head. Grabbing the flyer back from Mira, he turned to go outside when he came face to face with Guildarts. "Look kid, Scrambling away from Guildarts, Naruto utilized high speed to run out of the guild. "Geez Guildarts, you traumatized that kid," some random guild member said out loud as people began to laugh. Man, I can't even apologize without him taking off, Gildarts complained as he rubbed his scalp. Well, what do you expect? You used all of your magic power to scare him. It's only natural that he'd be terrified to be anywhere near you, Mira said as she crossed her arms and glared at Gildarts. I didn't want to hurt the kid and that was the fastest way to get him to stop, he said as Mira kept glaring at him. Walking away from her, he walked over to Makarov who was, like always, drinking beer. Hey, master. I see that Naruto still runs in fear from you, Makarov said calmly. Yeah, I don't think he and I are going to be on speaking terms anytime soon, he sighed as he spoke. Don't worry about it. He'll get over it. However, there's something I'd like to discuss with you, Makarov said as he put down his beer. XXXXXX hiding inside his tree, Naruto took deep breaths as he tried to calm down. Every time that he saw Gildarts, he instantly remembered him using his full power. The pure feeling of helplessness that had been invoked inside him always paralyzed him. In fact, it wasn't really a fear of Gildarts, but a fear of that helplessness. It angered and terrified him that just seeing him could invoke such feelings. Raising his head he thought, is this how Gray and Natsu feel about Urza? Slapping his cheeks lightly, he stood up and decided that if Natsu and Gray could deal with their fear of Urza, he could do the same with Gildarts. Opening a door in his tree, he blinked when he saw the pouring rain. Closing the door, he ran up to the top floor of his tree. Creating a balcony, he was shocked to see a vortex forming in the sky. Activating his battle archive, he began to analyze the vortex. However, within moments he realized it was a gigantic space-time spell. Using his arc of space as a base to analyze it, he began to understand what it did and how it did it. Unfortunately, as he finished breaking it down there was a bright flash and he had to cover his eyes. As the flash died down, he opened his eyes and saw that his tree had created a barrier around itself. Anything within the barrier had been protected from that flash, so it was the only spot of color in a white wasteland. Holy shit. You're a good tree, Naruto said as he patted the tree in thanks. As the barrier dropped, he saw that parts of the surrounding landscape had been taken as well. Thankfully, poor Lyuzuka's home was fine. Jumping off the balcony he ran towards where the guild used to stand. Running through the wasteland that Magnolia had now become was nerve-wracking as the former city was uncomfortably silent. Using high speed, he cut the trip short as he arrived and saw Wendy, Natsu, Happy, and Carla. Oh thank God, at least you four are okay, he expressed happily as he came to a stop, but at that moment they took off flying into the sky. Oh come on, he yelled as they flew up into the sky. Conflicted, he decided to stay to see if could find any other survivors. However, his search was over before it even began as someone started fading into view. When I saw that your tree was covered in a barrier, I was hoping you had survived the anima, he said as he finished appearing completely. Mistogen, wait, you're the Jellal guy that always makes Urza sad. I thought you were in jail, Naruto exclaimed as he backed up and got himself ready for a fight. I don't have time to explain, but know that I am not the Jellal that you speak of. I am Mistogen, he said as he pulled some sort of container out of his pocket. Look, whatever your name is, you called that giant spell in the sky an anima? He asked as the identity of fake Jellal Mistogen wasn't important at the moment. Unfortunately, I really don't have time to explain. All you need to know is that if you don't go through that portal before it closes, then it's very likely that all of our friends will die. Fake Jellal Mistogen explained as he threw Naruto a pill. Look, you may not know this, but I can replicate any spell if I have enough time to study it. I saw that thing forming from the start and I saw it end. I can recreate that thing no problem, so we have plenty of time, Naruto said as he caught the pill and made it clear he wasn't going anywhere. Sighing, fake Jellal Mistogen explained. I come from a world where magic power isn't as plentiful as Earthland. As a result, the king of that world has decided to steal magic power from this one. The entire reason I was here was to make sure that couldn't happen. Unfortunately, the animas had grown too large for me to be able to contain by myself. As a result, all of Magnolia was taken. Absorbing all of that information in, Naruto said, well, that was a stupid plan. Surprised, Mistogen looked at Naruto wide-eyed. What? Were you going to spend the rest of your life stopping the animas? Why didn't you ask us for help? We're all family, aren't we? This was caused by my people. I couldn't get anyone else involved, Mistogen explained shamefully. Seriously? Dude, you have got to work on your communication issues, Naruto said before he remembered. Then again, I didn't tell anyone I was dying. So I guess that makes me a hypocrite. Seeing him laugh helped Mistogen relax just a tiny bit and reminded him why he loved fairy tale. By the way, hearing Naruto brought him back. What's this thing for? Seeing him holding up the pill, he explained. It's medicine that allows you to use magic in Edelus. Eating the pill, a question formed in Naruto's head. Why do we need medicine to do that? I'm not really sure. Poor Lyuzuka was the one who made the medicine. She probably knows. Mistogen explained before he and Naruto heard something behind them. All I wanted was a cat. I didn't want to be the only dragon slayer without a cat. Recognizing the voice, Naruto began to laugh. Gajeel, you made it. Of course, dragon slayers are immune to the absorption effects of anima. Mistogen said out loud as he figured out what happened. Really? That's neat. Anyway, I'm gonna go visit poor Lyuzuka and ask her something. Send Gajeel along and then you and I can rendezvous at her house. Flying off without waiting for an answer, Naruto flew as quickly as he could to poor Lyuzuka's tree. XXXXXX, okay, so the reason we need the medicine is simply because of the Aeternano? Naruto asked as poor Lyuzuka begrudgingly allowed him into her home. Yes, the minute difference between Earthland Aeternano and Edelus Aeternano makes it so that you can't consciously expel your magic power. Poor Lyuzuka said as she readied her broom. How much more of that medicine do you have? He asked suddenly, which made poor Lyuzuka pause. Why? She asked as she narrowed her eyes and got an inkling of what he was planning. Well, we have to stop the anima from being used or else all of this will just happen again. So, in case it was needed we could get everyone to help lend a hand. He said with a grin. Get out, she said as she swung her broom at him. Running out of her home, he landed just as Mistogen arrived. Am I to assume you're finished with your business here? Yeah, we're good. I just wanted to know if she had any extra medicine in case we needed it. He explained as he intertwined his fingers together. Thrusting his hands up into the air he yelled, Arc of Space, Anima. In the sky just like before, another vortex formed on a much smaller scale. Well, let's go, to Edelus, he exclaimed as he activated Era and Mistogen readied his staves. Flying into the vortex, he saw that Mistogen was traveling inside a pillar of light. As they approached, they were blinded by a bright light. Once they could see again, he was amazed at how wondrous everything looked. In fact, he would have continued exploring if Mistogen hadn't landed and signaled for him to land as well. We have a lot of work to do. First you have to find Natsu and Wendy. As long as they can't access their magic power they'll be vulnerable. Mistogen said as he handed Naruto a small glass case with 2 of the pills he had taken. I'll look for them, but it might take me a bit. What are you going to do in the meantime? Naruto asked as he put the case away in his requip space. I'm going to go to the royal city to look for our friends. If I find them, I'll leave a marker in the outskirts of the city telling you where to find them. That way you can send them back to Earthland. Nodding to his plan, Naruto decided to change one thing. Give me a moment, Naruto said before he activated his archive. Gasping, Mistogen felt information flow into his mind. Okay, if you find our friends all you have to think is Mark. It'll tell me where you found our friends and I'll be able to track it. Crossing his arms, Naruto waited for the actual dangerous part of the plan. What about the anima though? Unless we can somehow stop them from casting it again, this won't really solve anything. Humans of Edelus don't have internal magic containers, and as such can't control magic power directly. However, we have developed machines that can do that for us. Anima uses one such machine. I'll set it to reverse-ing all of the magic power of Edelus into Earthland. That way the anima can never be used again. Mistogen said with certainty as Naruto's eyes widened. Whoa, isn't that just a bit drastic? We can figure something out that won't possibly kill a whole bunch of people. Naruto said as he tried to convince Mistogen. Shaking his head, Mistogen refused. It's not just about magic power. The people of Edelus have grown so desperate that they'll do anything to make sure they never run out. If there's even a shred of magic power left, they'll fight. So the only way to save the world is to destroy it is what you're saying, Naruto said with a frown as he started clenching his hands. It's not the best answer, but it's the only one that'll work, Mistogen said as he clenched his eyes. You should go. The longer Natsu and Wendy are without magic power the more in danger they'll be in. Angry, but understanding he was right, Naruto jabbed a finger at him. This isn't over. We'll find another way, even if I have to kick your ass to stop you from doing something monumentally stupid. Flying away as fast as he could, Naruto didn't see Mistogen smiling sadly. I know you'll try, Naruto. but no one can stop this. XXXXXX. Well, I didn't think it was possible to get bored of looking at wondrous sights, but here I am. Bored out of my mind. Naruto complained as he flew along the Sky River. For several hours now, he had been searching for any sign of Natsu and Wendy. Mostly large-scale destruction. Although since Natsu was without magic power, he didn't really know how he'd cause such destruction, just that he would. Well, fish, I guess it's just you and, stopping in midair, he looked around until he found the direction he wanted to go. I know that feeling, it's space-time manipulation. Picking up speed, he felt the sensation get even larger before it felt like it was going to explode. Pushing himself even faster, he was able to reach the area the sensation was coming from before he saw the fairy tale guild disappear. However, not even a moment later a giant creature crashed right where the guild had been. What the hell? Naruto asked himself as the smoke cleared and he saw Urza riding the creature. Still staying in the air, he was about to land when he heard someone else speak up. Deciding to listen in, he heard exactly what happened to his fairy tale guild. Now that Earthland's fairy tale has been turned into a giant lacrima, the kingdom should have more than enough magic power to last for a decade. The man in pink armor said to the Daedalus Urza. Good, then that means I can take my time enjoying the hunt for fairy tale. Daedalus Urza said with a smirk. However, that smirk disappeared when a pressure suddenly appeared all around them. Looking up, neither of the Daedalus soldiers were expecting to see the torrent of magic power pouring out of Naruto. Mistogen didn't tell me they had been turned into lacrima. That makes this all that much more time-sensitive. Naruto thought to himself as he descended and confronted them. You're planning to turn my friends into magic power? What kind of despicable people are you? Naruto asked the two paralyzed soldiers. You two are going to tell me exactly where my friends are or you won't be leaving here alive. XXXXXX. Finding the Daedalus Fairy Tale Guild had taken a while as he needed to analyze the magical energies left at the teleportation site. Of course, this was all after dealing with Nightwalker and Sugar Boy. Walking up to the door, he opened it as he remembered to shift his body as he was carrying his new sword. He also needed to see if the levy of this world was as smart as the levy of his world. He really needed her help. Not caring that he was drawing attention, he looked around the room and saw that while there was a Natsu and Wendy, they weren't his Natsu and Wendy. Sighing, he closed the door behind him. I'm looking for a few people. They both had cats with them. Their names were Natsu and Wendy. Seeing the shocked looks coming from them, he reasoned that they knew who he was talking about. I kinda figured that they would go to the fairy tale guild even if it wasn't our fairy tale. So I'm guessing that you're from the other world's fairy tale. Hearing that melodious voice, Naruto turned his head and smiled when he saw it was her. Mira, you have no idea how good it is to see you, even if you aren't the Mira I know, he said with a laugh. But to answer your question, yeah, I'm from Earthland. I've been trying to find Natsu and Wendy all day, but first is the levy of this world a genius like mine? I need her to drain this sword of all of its magic power, Naruto said as he stabbed the massive sword into the floor. Turning to look at Levi, he saw her raise an eyebrow. XXXXXX. Okay, I've drained the sword of all its magic power. Now it's just a giant slab of metal, Levi said as she turned her chair to look at Naruto. You said you're storing the magic over here, right? Naruto said as he pointed to the giant glass tube that was holding the magic from the sword. Yeah, we keep it separated so that we can purify it later on, she said as he began to look at the glass tube intently. Now, I didn't ask questions because we desperately needed the magic power, but now that we have it I have to know why. The amount of magic this thing had is more than enough to keep us going for a few months, she said as she crossed her arms and glared at Naruto. The magic power isn't important. It's what the magic power is composed of that is, he said as he kept staring at the tube. The hell are you talking about? She asked as she stood up and walked toward him. I'm talking about the Aether-nano. I didn't notice it at first because I was absorbing it in such small amounts, but when Nightwalker and I fought, I felt it, he explained as he began to understand exactly what was going on in Daedalus. Nightwalker? Levi said as she stopped in her tracks. The fairy hunter? Turning his head, he looked at her and she freaked out even more. Yeah, I fought her when I was trying to find Natsu and Lucy. Let me tell you, she might be an evil, but damn if she couldn't fight just like the Urza from my world. What the hell happened to your eyes and how are you still alive? She screamed at him as she backed up into her chair. Oh yeah, this is my battle archive. I'm using it to analyze the Aether-nano. As for how I'm still alive, simple, I kicked Nightwalker's ass, he said as he got back to looking at the magic power. That's impossible. The fairy hunter kills anyone who stand in her way with that damn spear of hers, she screamed with tears in her eyes. Where do you think I got the sword from? I just transformed it from a spear to a sword, he said nonchalantly as she froze and looked at the sword. That's the 10 Commandments? She whispered as people began to cram into the basement as they had heard Levi scream. Yup. There was a guy with her in pink armor, called himself Sugar Boy. Anyway, I used his weapon to liquefy the 10 Commandments and then I turned it into a sword, he said as he finished analyzing the Aethernano. It really is like I thought. The Aethernano used to be the same as Earthlands, but somehow it changed. As a result, there was less absorption of the Aethernano from the atmosphere, resulting in less magic power. He thought as the analysis spelled it out for him. Grabbing the 10 Commandments from the stand he had placed it, he charged it back up with his magic power. The resulting glow and release of power had everyone back up as they didn't know what was happening. There we go, back to full power for probably the first time in years, he said as he swung the sword. What the hell was that? Levi asked as it seemed that everyone else was speechless. I charged it back up with my magic. Took quite a bit too, he said as he looked the blade over to make sure he hadn't messed up in the reforming process. Then Naruto realized what she was referring to. Oh, that's right. Earthland wizards have an internal container that stores magic. This allows us to utilize magic as needed without the use of magic tools. Hearing whispers of things like, "That's crazy, impossible, he's lying," let him know that maybe he shouldn't have said that. Well, I got the info I came for. Can you guys point me in the direction of where Natsu and Wendy went? He asked as he put the 10 Commandments on his back. XXXXXX, you know, all of you may have different personalities than the ones from my world, but deep down you're the same, Naruto said with a smile as he stood outside the guild and everyone was prepared to send him off. We know you'll just ignore our warning like the other Natsu did, but you really shouldn't challenge the king, Droi said as Naruto readjusted his sword. It doesn't matter to us who we have to fight to save our friends. Whether it be your king, the army, or your entire damn world. We'll save them and we'll all go home, he said as the entire guild was once again speechless. Your guild? It seems to be filled with amazing people, Mirajane said with a smile. They're my family. They do the same for me, he said as he activated Era and took off. Wasn't that the magic of the Exceed? Natsu asked, frightened by what he just saw. I think it was. Gray finished with a whisper. The end. Now we will see you in the next video.